Chapter 635. The inside of Carefree Valley was still the same as before. Spiritual aura, devil aura, and filthy aura mixed together. Every step they took was filled with danger. But for nascent soul cultivators it was just a piece of cake. The 5 of them easily entered the valley. Mo Tinga couldn't help but recall the strange spiritual beast, Ling Yunha, when she saw the crack at the entrance of the valley. Fellow Taoist Ling, where's your spiritual beast, Little Black? Ling Yunha searched his spiritual beast bag and released Vulture Little Black. Here. Since Little Black hadn't advanced to the 8th rank, Little Black basically couldn't help them. So Ling Yunha only looked at it for a moment before putting it away. After looking at Little Black, Nie Wushang suddenly said, Tinga, I remember you said the first person you saw practicing the primordial devil technique produced dead aura? She was talking about Ring Yufeng. Mo Tinga nodded. Yes, Nie Wushang said. My master also started practicing the primordial devil technique a long time ago. The reason why he ended up like this was because the cultivation technique he comprehended wasn't good enough. Mo Tinga recalled Master Songfeng's ghostly appearance. How similar was he to Ren Yufeng? Could it be that the primordial devil technique really had a path leading to dead aura? As she thought about this, she saw Nie Wushang take out a shiny black stone from her robe and throw it to the side of the crack next to the dead aura crack. Magic crystal? Mo Tinga recognized it at a glance. It was the magic crystal Mei Feng used to control them when they fell into his trap. It was said to be the main material of the corpse soul technique. It could absorb people's energy and control their souls, turning them into walking corpses without them knowing. It was a first-class evil item. Nie Wushang said, look, this thing can really absorb dead aura. Everyone saw black dead aura being slowly absorbed into the magic crystal, making it look fuller and brighter. What do you want dead aura for? Mo Tinga asked. Nie Wushang smiled. It's a secret. After the magic crystal finished absorbing the dead aura, they were about to enter the valley. Mo Tinga thought for a moment, then released Little Feng and Fei Fei from the spiritual beast bracelet. The biggest use of the spiritual beast bracelet given by Devil Monarch Night Frost was that she could carry several spiritual beasts with her, without worrying about them delaying her cultivation. So she also put Little Feng in her spiritual beast bracelet. When the 3 of them saw Xiao Feng, their eyes widened, especially Ling Yunha. Jing Xingji and Nie Wushang were more or less used to it. From time to time, the 2 of them would come up with something that would make people envious, jealous, and hate them. Huh? Nie Wushang fixed her gaze on Fei Fei. This doesn't seem to have an 8th rank. Mo Tinga said, this is my spiritual beast Fei Fei. You've all seen him before. He's only in the 7th rank, and he can transform because of other reasons. Fei Fei casually cupped his hands at them and stood to the side. Jing Xingji stared at him for a good while, then suddenly said, so the remaining white tiger's breath was subdued by you? When Fei Fei heard this, she turned her head and looked at him seriously for a while. Then, she suddenly realized. So you're the person that the Pearl of the White Tiger recognized as its master. You've really lucked out. Both of them had the aura of the White Tiger on them at the same time, so it was very easy to sense them. Jing Xingji curled his lips. What a rude child. No matter what, I'm from the same generation as Qin Shoujing. Do you know that you have to address him as martial uncle? Humph. Fei Fei turned her head. Without me, would you have the Pearl of the White Tiger? Without me, you would have the Pearl of the White Tiger. Fei Fei was speechless and retreated in defeat. The others laughed. Little Feng saluted them. Little Feng greets fellow Taoists. Although she was Qin Shi's spiritual beast, she was also an 8th-ranked demonic beast cultivator. In front of nascent soul cultivators, calling them fellow Taoists was enough. After exchanging greetings, the group of 5 people and 2 demonic beasts set out again. Fei Fei lead the way. Fei Fei was the one who discovered the Black Tortoise sacrificial temple, so Mo Tinga ordered it without any politeness. Fei Fei didn't object. Although it had a bad temper and was stingy, it wouldn't refuse work that needed to be done. After taking a moment to identify the direction, they picked a direction to go. Compared to their trip to Carefree Valley 100 years ago, their lineup this time could be said to be gorgeous. All kinds of obstacles on the way weren't a problem at all. Soon, they arrived at the place where the three giant apes appeared. Follow me. Feifei snapped its fingers, picked a strange angle, and drilled into the bottom of the rocks between the trees. For this reason, it even deliberately revealed its true form. After walking for a while, and seeing that it was getting harder and harder to walk, Jing Xingji couldn't help but ask, "You're not deliberately retaliating against us, are you?" Feifei rolled its eyes. "I'm free." Jing Xingji still wanted to say something, but the two of them suddenly stopped at the same time. "There's a situation." The 5 people and 2 demonic beasts stopped in their spots. Among them, Jing Xingji was also in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. Sword cultivators focused on cultivating a single sword, so their power was greater. Correspondingly, they didn't cultivate much divine sense, and didn't have any special secret techniques, so their warning ability was inferior to that of traditional Dharma cultivators. After a while, Jing Xingji also uttered an "ha," followed by Nie Wushang and Ling Yunha. "Why are there so many people?" Ling Yunha was extremely astonished. Everyone looked at each other. Their divine senses clearly sensed that many nascent soul cultivators were coming this way. Inside Carefree Valley, the auras were mixed so they couldn't sense far. However, as nascent soul cultivators, they couldn't be wrong about this. It wouldn't be strange if there were only core formation cultivators. The spiritual plants and wondrous things in Carefree Valley were extremely attractive to core formation cultivators. But if there were nascent soul cultivators, Carefree Valley basically wouldn't be in any danger. If there was a need, it was enough for them to come alone. There was no need to invite helpers, let alone so many people. "You guys find a place to wait for me. I'll go take a look." Ling Yunha made this decision in just a moment. The others looked at each other then nodded in agreement. The 4 of them more or less had enemies in Yunzhong, especially Mo Tinga and Qin Shi. They had offended countless nascent soul cultivators during their trip to Sea of Returning Ruins, and every one of them was an influential figure in Yunzhong. Only Ling Yunha, as a native of Yunzhong, had a wide network and was quite popular, so the cultivators in Yunzhong would more or less give him face. Ling Yunha made some preparations. He gently waved the moonlight essence he was holding in his hand, scattering it into countless fragments that entered his sleeve. A lot of flowing moonlight essence then appeared on his cuff. Then he followed his original path and went to the entrance of the inner valley. Before long, Ling Yunha stopped in front of the big tree where he rested when he first entered Carefree Valley. He had already seen the first person. He was wearing a black cloak and was surrounded by devil aura. Next to him was a refined corpse. It was Demon Monarch Moon Shadow from the North Sea not long ago. Ling Yunha narrowed his eyes slightly. Could it be that the leak of Carefree Valley this time was caused by Demon Monarch Moon Shadow? They stayed on the North Sea coast for more than half a month, so it was possible. However, what did Demon Monarch Moon Shadow see? Why did he have to make life difficult for them? After Demon Monarch Moon Shadow, there were several cultivators in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, including devil cultivators and Dao cultivators. For example, Nan Guatian from the Dawning Pill sect, Daoist Ru Yi from the 5 Elements Valley, and a few nascent soul realm cultivators from the Juyan sect. Following them were Demon Monarch Night Frost, Supremacy Xuxiang, Han Shizhi, Ju Wu, Old Donkey Ma and others. Finally, there was a skinny young man dressed in black. A ghost-faced banner floated behind him, and the devil aura around him was faint. If not for his shocking aura, he did not look like a devil cultivator at all. Ling Yunha recognized them one by one. As he was once the sect master of the Juyan sect, he basically knew all of them. The last one was Yang Qingji. Back then, during the change in the returning ruined sea, Guifang Demon Monarch died, and Yang Qingji disappeared. Guifang City was occupied by another devil cultivator, in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. A few decades later, Yang Qingji appeared again. He had already formed a devil infant, and advanced to the nascent soul realm. Seeing Yang Qingji appear, the practitioners in the cloud all thought that he would go to take back Guifang City. Unexpectedly, Yang Qingji returned to Guifang City, but he did not take back the position of the city master. Instead, he asked to take back his personal belongings. How shocking was the inheritance of a devil cultivator in the late stage of the nascent soul realm. The new Guifeng City master naturally would not agree. He was an experienced nascent soul realm cultivator, which was higher than Yang Qingji by a small realm. Moreover, he controlled Guifeng City, so he had nothing to fear. Under such circumstances, Yang Qingji could only choose to take action. With a wave of the ghost-face banner, the flag of Guifeng City automatically submitted to him. With the appearance of the heavenly demon tower, the middle-stage devil cultivator admitted defeat without much action. He could not defeat the items of the demon venerable. With the difference in realm, he could only comfort himself in this way and admit defeat. It was just going to Guifeng City. No matter how precious the items were, they were not as important as his life. However, Yang Qingji did not take back Guifeng City as everyone thought. Instead, he did as he said at the beginning. He took back his personal belongings and left Guifeng City again. The new Guifeng City master was overjoyed. In the end, because of this defeat, he lost face. Not long after, he was defeated by another middle-stage devil cultivator, and Guifeng City changed hands again. And Yang Qingji did not care about all these. He left Guifeng City and disappeared. And now, Yang Qingji actually appeared here. Ling Yunhe's gaze froze. He stood under the tree and did not move. All the nascent soul realm cultivators stopped under the tree and gathered silently. The first to walk out of the line was a cultivator from Juyan sect. He said, "Junior brother Ling, why are you here?" Ling Yunhe nodded at this person and said, "Senior brother Yuan, I was entrusted by someone to come here to settle a karma. What are you guys doing?" This senior brother Yuan was a middle-stage nascent soul realm cultivator. He looked like he was in his 30s. He said, "We received news that there is an ancient sacrificial temple in Carefree Valley, so we came to take a look." Ling Yunhe paused when he heard that, and his gaze slowly shifted to Demon Monarch Yuang. Did Senior Yuang say that? Senior brother Yuan nodded. Yes. Ling Yunhe smiled and raised his voice. Senior Yuang, after we parted at the North Sea, although you were defeated, it was normal for the 5 of us to team up. Senior, you don't have to be so petty, right? He said this deliberately for the others to hear. As expected, when they heard that, all the cultivators shifted their gaze to Demon Monarch Yuang. They all knew Ling Yunhe's background. He had only formed his nascent soul for a few decades, and his cultivation had just stabilized. He said that the 5 of them would team up so calmly. Presumably, his companion's cultivation would not be too high. Demon Monarch Yuang actually lost to such a person? Everyone found it unbelievable. Demon Monarch Yuang was one of the 3 great demon monarchs in Yunzhong. Besides his cultivation, his strength was also top-notch. Humph! Under the cloak, Demon Monarch Yu Ying's voice was still very steady. Don't talk so fast. Ling family's boy, we are all here for the treasure today. It is useless for you to say all this. Why is it useless? Ling Yunhe's smile was very perfect. If not for the battle at the North Sea, I'm afraid Senior would still be chasing after fellow Taoist Tiancan to snatch the primordial demon great technique. Why would you appear here? Just as Ling Yunhe finished speaking, Yang Qingji, who was the last to leave, suddenly looked at them with a flash in his eyes. Chapter 636. Ling Yunhe deliberately changed the topic to the North Sea. The others weren't stupid. They didn't make things difficult for Moon Shadow Demon Lord, nor did they ask Ling Yunhe. They just watched from the sidelines. After the incident in the Sea of Returning Ruins, although Juyan sect didn't announce the loss of the Vermilion Bird Bow, it quickly spread throughout Yunzhong. Almost all high-level cultivators knew about it. At that time, Master Taoist Yuanmu and the others guessed that Huayan Temple and Yu Mountain Academy most likely knew about the existence of the sacrificial temple. Moreover, they had been planning for so many years, so the matter was leaked. However, it was meaningless to pursue this matter. The Vermilion Bird Bow was gone, so Juyan sect didn't say anything. However, the Vermilion Bird Sacrificial Temple, the Divine Beast Bow, and the Psychic Magic Weapon had left a deep impression on many nascent soul cultivators, making them restless. Therefore, when they heard that there might be a sacrificial temple here, some of them came. They were not afraid that this was fake. With so many people, No one would be able to set up a trap to catch them all in one fell swoop. And the current situation was that the Moon Shadow Demon Lord was not satisfied, and was purposely causing trouble for Ling Yunhe and the others. Junior Marshal Brother Ling, what do you mean? Senior Marshal Brother Yuan frowned and asked slowly. Ling Yunhe stared at him and said softly, Senior Marshal Brother Yuan, let's talk about it when we get back to the sect. Senior Marshal Brother Yuan paused for a moment and finally nodded. Ling Yunhe knew that the sect was very dissatisfied with him for going with them without telling them. Although Mo Tiange caused a big disturbance in Yunzhong, the only people she really offended and suffered was Juyin sect. After losing the Vermilion Bird Bao, if Master Taoist Yuanmu wasn't calm enough, he would have rushed to the Celestial Pole to fight with them, when he learned they were cultivators from Xianqing School in the Celestial Pole. This time, they actually learned from others that Ling Yunhe went with them privately. This was simply a slap in the face. Therefore, Senior Marshal Brother Yuan and the others came without notifying Ling Yunhe. For one thing, they didn't want to let go of this opportunity. For another, they wanted to warn Ling Yunhe not to act recklessly. Ling Yunhe was a smart man. As soon as he saw Senior Marshal Brother Yuan and heard his words, he knew why they came. So he just said they would talk about it when they got back to the sect. This meant he knew what he was doing and didn't forget the sect. Of course, Senior Brother Yuan and the others wouldn't let others laugh at them for nothing. When they heard this, they temporarily let it go. The Moon Shadow Demon Lord snorted coldly and said, It's up to you whether you believe it or not. It's up to you whether you want to go or not. He had no intention of explaining at all. He knew that he didn't need to explain at all. As long as these people had this thought in their hearts, it was enough. Moreover, when he released the news, he made it clear that he was here to cause trouble. Just as he finished speaking, Yang Qingji, who was at the very back, strode forward, staring at him as he asked, Elder Yuing, what do you want the Great Prime Devil Art for? Although Yang Qingji was an early-stage nascent soul cultivator, none of the cultivators in Yunzhong dared to treat him as an early-stage nascent soul cultivator. He had the Heavenly Devil Tower, which was the sacred item of the Devil Lord. Even an ordinary mid-stage nascent soul cultivator was defeated by him. Yet he was able to do it as if it was nothing. The Moon Shadow Demon Master said indifferently, I didn't snatch anything from your Guifang city. I don't have to account to you, do I? Naturally, Elder doesn't have to account to me. Yang Qingji's face was pale and thin, but his momentum became fiercer. Junior is just worried that Senior might have misunderstood something and wasted your efforts. You don't have to worry about that. Under the cloak, the Moon Shadow Demon Master's expression couldn't be seen clearly, but his tone was mocking. Fellow Taoist Ling, Danxia Sect's Nanguitian said with a smile, Where are your companions? If they weren't enemies, Ling Yunhe would have applauded him for asking this question. When they came here, they didn't hide their whereabouts at all, so the cultivators outside Carefree Valley all saw who his companions were. Once they heard what he said, they immediately knew who he was asking about. Nia Wushang and Jing Xingji aside, Mo Tiange and Qin Shi were very famous in Yunzhong. During their trip to returning Ruin Sea, they cheated Juyin sect, and when they came out, the heavenly tribulation caused the destruction of One Leaf Island. Perhaps the changes in heaven and earth afterward were also related to them. If one were to ask the nascent soul cultivators in Yunzhong who they hated the most, apart from Juyin sect, probably no one would say the two of them. However, if one were to ask who they hated the most, they would firmly occupy the top of the list. Apart from robbing Juyin sect's things, these two calamities indeed didn't do anything too excessive, but their existence was simply a disaster in Yunzhong. Fine, in any case, everything was irredeemable, and they were disciples of a large sect in the Celestial Pole, so they didn't feel like making a fuss about it. But why did they come to Yunzhong? After robbing Juyin sect's Vermilion Bird Bao, did they also want to rob something from Black Tortoise Sacrificial Temple? It was fine if they didn't know, but now that they knew, how could they let go of this possibility? Their current mentality was just like what old Donkey Ma said. How could we let those two juniors take away our Yunzhong's things? In any case, they didn't have to pay to go and take a look. Therefore, Nan Guotian's words were very popular. Everyone wanted to ask Ling Yunhe, whose side are you on? Could it be that you're deliberately befriending them and waiting for an opportunity to take revenge for the vermilion bird Bao? Ling Yunhe didn't answer this question. He just nodded at Nan Guotian and said loudly, "Fellow Taoists, no matter why you're here, this carefree valley doesn't belong to my family. I don't have the right to stop you. Please do whatever you want to do." As soon as he finished speaking, someone shouted, "Ling Yunhe, what do you mean by that? Did you really form an alliance with those people in the celestial pole to rob Yunzhong's things?" Ling Yunhe's eyes turned cold as he looked directly at that cultivator. This was a devil cultivator with a rather unfamiliar face. His cultivation level was also average, as if he had just advanced. However, his expression was arrogant, and he really didn't look like an ordinary devil cultivator. For him to suddenly ask such a question at this time and place, it was unknown whether someone had instructed him to do so. He put on a fake smile and said, "I've said before that I'm here on someone's request to settle a karma. All of you are top-notch cultivators in the human world, so I don't need to say anything to know how serious it is to bear karma for no reason. What celestial pole, Yunzhong? I'm too small to bear such a big hat. Even so, why didn't you even inform your own sect? You're obviously up to no good." Ling Yunhe raised his eyebrows and asked with a smile, "Your Excellency, may I know your great name?" The devil cultivator's aura weakened when he heard that, but he shouted again, "What do you mean? Are you looking for an opportunity to take revenge?" "Nothing," Ling Yunhe said slowly. "It's just that your Excellency was so enthusiastic that I almost thought you were a descendant of Julian's sect who was stranded outside." "Don't talk nonsense," the person said angrily. "Your behavior is strange, so why can't I ask?" "I can ask, but..." Ling Yunhe's expression turned cold. "What's your Excellency's identity? What right do you have to ask about my Julian sect? Are you trying to use this to sow discord?" There were no fools among the nascent soul cultivators. Once he heard Ling Yunhe's words, the devil cultivator shut up. He finally knew that being a sect master was better than him. If he continued talking, he wouldn't gain anything other than losing face. "Everyone," Senior Marshal Brother Yuan stepped forward at the right time. "Outsiders don't need to worry about Julian sect's matters. No matter what my junior Marshal Brother Ling did, he didn't do anything that violated morality. An ownerless treasure belongs to those who are capable. If you want to fight for it, Junior Marshal Brother Ling didn't stop you. If you want to fight for it, please go ahead. However, if you try to sow discord, don't blame Julian sect for being impolite." When he said the last sentence, Senior Marshal Brother Yuan revealed a murderous aura. Even though none of the Julian sect cultivators present had a late nascent soul cultivation base, no one dared to belittle his words. For the past tens of thousands of years, Julian sect had always been a big shot in Yunzhong. Its strength far surpassed the other sections. Putting everything else aside, perfected Yuanmu was still holding the fort in the sect. Hee. Amidst the silence, old Donkey Ma suddenly laughed softly. His chrysanthemum-like old face scrunched up into a ball as he said in a gentle voice, "Fellow Taoists, what are you waiting for here? The matter of fighting for the treasure naturally depends on your own means." The atmosphere relaxed. Supremacy Su Xiang's loud voice rang out as well. "That's right. So much nonsense and a waste of time. If you want to leave, leave quickly." This time, the late nascent soul cultivators who came were only Demon Lord Yu Ying, Demon Lord Night Frost, Old Donkey Ma, and Supremacy Su Xiang. This time, it was different from the Sea of Returning Ruins. It was only Demon Lord Yu Ying's one-sided statement. It was already good enough that so many late nascent soul cultivators came. Yu Mountain Academy and Huayan Temple only sent Han Shizhi and Jiewu. More than 50 years had passed since the Sea of Returning Ruins. With the power of the Holy Relic and the harvest from the Sea of Returning Ruins, the 5 people who were recognized by the Holy Relic entered the nascent soul realm one after another. First it was Han Shizhi and Ling Yunhe. Then it was Mo Tiange and Yang Qingji. Jiewu's cultivation level was slightly lower, but not long ago, he also successfully advanced to the nascent soul realm. The age at which they advanced to the nascent soul realm was astonishing. Aside from Han Shizhi, who was slightly older, The others were all less than 300 years old. In the past, this could be considered shocking. Their strength was also astonishing. Aside from Wu Minglu, the other four were all top-grade magic weapons. Yang Qingji easily defeated a middle-stage nascent soul cultivator, with the help of Heavenly Devil Tower, was a good example. As for Han Shizhi, although Wu Minglu wasn't originally a magic weapon, his cultivation technique was more useful than a magic weapon. In addition, he had an extraordinary comprehension ability and was a first-class genius among Confucian cultivators. After Wu Minglu turned into his own, his progress was astonishing. He was only one step away from advancing to the middle stage. Wu Minglu was also refined into a magic weapon by him, which was no different from other holy relic. "Old Yu, let's go." Supremacy Su Xiang urged impatiently. Demon Lord Yu Ying was very unhappy that his name was called Old Yu. "What does it have to do with me? I didn't invite you here." "Oh, why are you so petty? No matter what, we've been friends for more than 1,000 years. Leaving aside the messy entanglement, Senior Marshal Brother Yuan whispered to Ling Yunhe. "Junior Marshal Brother Ling, aren't you coming with us?" Ling Yunhe replied apologetically. "Senior Marshal Brother Yuan, I'm sorry. What I said just now is the truth. After I settle this karma, I'll return to the sect and explain everything to you." Senior Marshal Brother Yuan nodded and didn't say anything else. "Be careful." Right after he said that, he led the other Juyan sect cultivators and left with Demon Lord Yu Ying. Ling Yunhe stood there for a while before he turned around and left alone. Chapter 637. Ling Yunhe restrained his breath and hid his tracks, then walked through the rubble. There were so many people here, and some of them wanted to use him to find Mo Tiange and the others. He had to be careful and get rid of the people following him. The cloud-soaring crane weaved left and right, moving forward and backward. The terrain of the Carefree Valley was complicated. Coupled with the fact that the cloud-soaring crane deliberately hid its tracks, it did not take long to shake off the people who were secretly following it. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly felt a breath approaching, and someone said, "Fellow Taoist Ling, wait." He was familiar with this voice. Ling Yunhe turned around in surprise and saw Yang Qingji coming out of the rubble. Yang Qingji took some time to find Ling Yunhe's position and slowly walked towards him, his face still expressionless. "Fellow Taoist Yang?" Ling Yunhe frowned slightly. Yang Qingji nodded. "Fellow Taoist Ling, are you going to meet with fellow Taoist Tianqin and fellow Taoist Mo?" Ling Yunhe didn't need to hide this, so he said, "Yes. What can I do for you, fellow Taoist Yang?" "Take me there," Yang Qingji said. Ling Yunhe was stunned. Yang Qingji was with Mo Tiange and the others during the 20 years when the palace was closed in the returning ruined sea. This wasn't a secret. They must have gone through trials and tribulations together, so they must be friends. However, he just took him there without saying goodbye. "Fellow Taoist Ling, you can ask them. If they don't agree, I won't force them." Ling Yunhe thought for a moment, then took out a summoning talisman from his robe, said a few words, and sent it. Before long, the summoning talisman came back with their reply. "Bring him there." "Let's go," he said. They agreed. Before long, Ling Yunhe appeared in front of the four people with Yang Qingji. Compared to before, Yang Qingji didn't look like a devil cultivator at all. His whole body was covered with condensed but well-concealed devil aura. His youthful face was delicate and handsome, but he was pale and thin. People who didn't know him would only think he was a young man who just entered the devil path, not a nascent soul devil cultivator. They greeted each other and introduced Little Feng and Fei Fei. Yang Qingji didn't say any polite words and went straight to the point. "It'll be very difficult for you to go back safely." Mo Tiange was stunned and asked, "Fellow Taoist Yang, what do you mean?" Yang Qingji said nothing and turned to look at Ling Yunhe. Ling Yunhe smiled bitterly and described what had happened earlier. He said, "They are hostile to me. Even the Juyan sect does not believe me." On the surface, the Juyan sect had temporarily given up on questioning him. However, the person they had sent out was Senior Brother Yuan. This spoke volumes. This Senior Brother Yuan was a clansman of perfected Yuan Mu. Mo Tiange heaved a sigh. "Fellow Taoist Ling, I've implicated you. Ling Yunhe shook his head and said calmly, "This is my own choice." He did not betray the Juyin sect. It was just that the Juyin sect could not understand him for now. "What about you? Fellow Taoist Yang, why are you looking for us?" Qin Shi didn't finish his sentence. The corners of Yang Qingji's mouth curled up, and it looked like he was smiling. "Since I came to find you, I'm naturally on your side." Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Although the five of them were quite strong when they teamed up, they were nothing in front of so many nascent soul cultivators. Yang Qingji actually wanted to join them under such circumstances? "Compared to them, I trust you more," Yang Qingji said. "In more than 20 years in the Sea of Returning Ruins, I was the weakest, but I was able to escape safely. I can see that you are all people who keep your word. If not, I wouldn't have come to join in the fun." "Then what does fellow Taoist Yang want?" Qin Shi asked again. Yang Qingji's gaze fell on Nye Wushang. "I want to know where the primordial devil great technique came from." Nye Wushang's eyes moved, but she didn't say anything. She could see that Yang Qingji was very insistent. The five of them simply expressed their opinions. Jing Xingji and Qin Shi reserved their opinions, while Mo Tiange, Nye Wushang, and Ling Yunhe agreed and accepted Yang Qingji into their group. "Fellow Taoist Yang, there's something I have to tell you first. The primordial devil stone tablet in the Black Tortoise Temple is probably the one in Wushang's hand. If you want to use it to search for the origin of the primordial devil great technique, you might as well exchange research with Wushang. If you go to the Black Tortoise Temple, you might return empty-handed," Mo Tiange said seriously. Yang Qingji's expression didn't change. "If that's the case, I won't ask for much." Just like that, a new alliance was formed. Everyone laid out the situation and talked about it. Among these cultivators, Devil Monarch Night Frost is old friends with us, and there's nothing in the temple that interests him, so he'll probably give us face. As for Wushang, he's not the type to argue. Years ago, I killed his junior martial brother, but he can also distinguish right from wrong. These two people basically won't become enemies. Devil Monarch Moon Shadow and Han Shiji, needless to say, they have a grudge against us, so they probably won't let it go easily. As for Nan Guotian and Old Donkey Ma, they're all opportunists. It's fine if there's no conflict of interest. But if there's a conflict of interest, they probably won't hesitate to turn hostile. Mo Tiange counted with her fingers according to the list Ling Yunhe gave her. No matter how she counted, most of them were enemies. Yang Qingji's expression was still cold. "It's already not bad. In the past few decades, your cultivation levels have improved greatly. With the 6 of us working together, unless 2 or more late-stage nascent soul cultivators join hands, the others won't be a problem." Yang Qingji appeared very confident. He believed that with his strength and the Heavenly Devil Tower, he could suppress ordinary middle-stage nascent soul cultivators. He knew the strength of Mo Tiange, Qin Shi and Jing Xingji. Back then, when Qin Shi and Jing Xingji joined hands, they could fight against late-stage nascent soul cultivators, let alone now that Jing Xingji and Mo Tiange had advanced to the middle stage. As for Nye Wushang, although this was the first time they met after she formed her nascent soul, he knew how powerful the primordial devil great technique was. There was also Ling Yunhe. He was a genius disciple of Juyin sect, and he also had the soul-restricting bead. If he went all out, he wouldn't be much weaker than Mo Tiange. If they couldn't take the initiative among these nascent soul cultivators with such a lineup, how could they have the face to say they were better than ordinary cultivators? "There's still us," Fei Fei said lazily on the side. Yang Qingji automatically ignored him. Xiaofeng was an 8th-ranked demonic beast cultivator with a noble bloodline, so she could be of help. Fei Fei hadn't even passed the transformation tribulation. When the time came, Mo Tiange had to put him into his spiritual beast bag. The few of them thought about it a few more times before they set out again. As before, Fei Fei transformed into his original form. While leading the way, he told them what he saw back then. There's nothing much to say about that sacrificial temple. However, the surrounding terrain is a bit special, so we might need to spend some effort. What terrain? Jing Xingji asked. Fei Fei didn't feel like explaining, so he said in a very bad tone. You'll know when we get there. Why are you talking so much nonsense? That tone made Jing Xingji's hands itch. You really don't know what a spiritual beast's duty is. As a spiritual beast, you have to talk to humans in a respectful and courteous tone, understand? Fei Fei paused for a moment, then directly lifted one of his hind legs and made a puppy shushing gesture to show his disdain. Upon seeing that, Jing Xingji shouted, "You're acting like a hooligan? As a spiritual beast, you're actually acting like a hooligan towards humans? Not to mention that there's a woman here. There's even a mother beast here. Don't you feel embarrassed?" Ahem. Xiaofeng cupped her hands and stood far away to show that it had nothing to do with her. Please, even if she was a female, she was a bird and Fei Fei was a beast. They were different races, alright? Besides, she could even be Fei Fei's grandmother. After walking for a while, Fei Fei suddenly stopped and sniffed with his nose. Then, he whimpered as if he was calling for something. Roar! Roar! As soon as his voice fell, other sounds rang out in the surroundings. Fei Fei whimpered again, and this sound also followed suit. The two beasts sang the same tune. Before long, the other side finally let down their guard. A huge figure drilled out of the stone forest step by step. This figure was terrifyingly huge. In front of it, the 6 of them were like little ants that could only raise their heads to look up. A 3-headed ape. Among the people present, 4 of them had seen this 3-headed ape with their own eyes in the past. 3 energies intertwined on its body, making it impervious to swords and spears and difficult to use magic to invade. Sure too. Fei Fei raised his head and shouted. The 3-headed ape stopped in front of them and stared at Fei Fei with his huge eyes for a while. Then he stretched out his palm and placed it in front of Fei Fei. Fei Fei leaped up and was lifted onto the shoulder by the 3-headed ape. Oh! The 3-headed ape blinked its eyes and tilted its head to look at Fei Fei on its shoulder. Fei Fei had this kind of magical ability. No matter what kind of ferocious beast it was, it wouldn't be hostile to it. The two beasts rubbed each other's heads affectionately and conversed in the beast's language for a while before Fei Fei finally turned around. He said, "Let's go. Sure to take us there." The first time they came to Carefree Valley, it was Sure to who took Fei Fei there. Otherwise, they wouldn't have discovered that a sacrificial temple was hidden here. As if it understood, Sure to raised its head and shouted a few times, then led the group through the rubble. Only those who had been inside knew how chaotic the terrain of Carefree Valley was. Sometimes it was spiritual aura, sometimes it was devil aura, and sometimes it was filthy aura. Sure to didn't care in the slightest. It was a monster born from the mixture of 3 auras. So no matter which aura it was, it wouldn't affect it. Moreover, these auras were nothing to a nascent soul cultivator. For a while, they moved forward very fast. Before long, they drilled into a certain cave. The group of people walked through the pitch-black cave. Mo Tinga took out the heaven and earth fan and used the mother moonstone on the fan pendant to illuminate the cave. Soon, the scene in the cave began to change. Chunks of ice emerged from the soil. At first, they were only small fragments, but as they went deeper and deeper, more and more of them appeared until their surroundings were covered by ice walls. It was as if they had walked into a world of ice and snow. So beautiful. Little Feng couldn't help but praise as she looked at the sparkling icicles around them and the jade-like ice walls. After passing through one ice cave after another, they gradually heard the sound of running water, and a meandering stream slowly appeared under their feet. The stream grew bigger and bigger. In the end, they stood in front of a huge underground river. Listening to the sound of running water and watching the turbulent waves, the 6 people were a bit dumbfounded. There's a river here? In fact, there was nothing wrong with having a river. What was strange was that this river gathered 3 auras, among which the dead aura was the strongest. How do we go? Emotinga asked. With their cultivation levels, they could walk directly, but this would consume a lot of spiritual aura. Moreover, if they were careless and got entangled by the dead aura, it would be very troublesome. Roar! Roar! The 3-headed ape raised its head and roared. Fei Fei said, "Sure to carry us there." The 3-headed ape casually knocked a huge piece of floating ice from the ice wall and threw it into the river. The 6 people and 1 beast watched for a while. Fei Fei, who was crouching on the 3-headed ape's shoulder, said impatiently, "Let's go." After hesitating for a moment, Everyone clenched their teeth and jumped onto the floating ice. The three-headed ape pushed the floating ice and stepped into the river. Chapter 638. The situation of this underground river was more complicated than that of Carefree Valley. In Carefree Valley, the three auras were scattered. Even if they were mixed together, they were as distinct as the light of the three auras in the stone forest. However, the three auras in the river were mixed into a strange state, as if they had become something else. It was similar to the aura of death, but it was more complicated. It was dark and strange, making people's hair stand on end. Without Shirtu, the six of them could also cross the river, but they would inevitably be entangled by this strange aura. Now Shirtu was pushing the ice flow. If the three auras entangled them, they would be swept away first. The six of them, and one beast moved forward steadily. This river was wide and deep. From time to time, chilly wind blew in, making people's hair stand on end. Shirtu stepped on the water, making splashing sounds as he pushed the ice flow, sending them to the other side of the river. Before long, the ice flow reached the other side, and they came down from it. Shirtu also waded into the water and climbed ashore. His height and physique made him fearless of the strangeness of this place. The group moved forward again. After crossing the underground river, the ground was full of puddles of black water. They walked back and forth, as if they were walking on the riverbank. After walking for a while, Feifei suddenly said, "There are ghost cultivators in front of us. Get ready to fight." And Emotienga was stunned. "Ghost cultivators?" Feifei said. "This seems to be a mass grave with many corpses buried here." So ghost cultivators appeared. Probably because of the chaotic aura here. These ghost cultivators have no spiritual wisdom, and only focus on killing. Shirtu and I aren't affected, but you guys can't. As they spoke, they all felt the aura of ghost cultivators. No wonder this place is dominated by the aura of death. There are ghost cultivators here. How strong are they? Ling Yunha asked. He always paid attention to the most practical questions. 5th, 6th, 7th rank. Probably, Feifei said irresponsibly. The important thing isn't their strength, but their numbers. A lot. If they're not strong enough, it's useless no matter how many there are. Right? As they thought about this, the six of them were already standing in front of a fissure. After a long time, Emotienga finally said one word. "So many? I've told you many times already." Feifei was carefree as he sat on Stone's shoulder, wagging his tail. The sight of this made everyone's teeth itch. He couldn't see the end of the ravine in front of him, and the ravine was filled with ghost cultivators that were like walking corpses that floated around like ghosts. The strength of these ghost cultivators was evenly distributed, ranging from low level to high level. At first glance, there were at least dozens of them who were above the nascent soul realm. "Kill them," Emotienga said. "That's the only way." As soon as Qinshi finished speaking, a red sword light darted out of his sleeve, and instantly turned into a red light that enveloped him. Soon after, the red light flashed towards the other side of the river with lightning speed. After entering the range of the canyon, the ghostly cultivators who were swimming at the bottom of the river suddenly sprang up like cats that had smelled blood. The eyes of these ghost cultivators were dull, but their movements were agile. Regardless of their cultivation level, as long as they sensed Qin Shi, they would all rush towards him. For a moment, ghostly shadows danced chaotically and chilly winds blew. The three young real fire sword light moved forward with an indomitable will. All the ghosts that got close to it were killed by the vermilion bird's flames. Jing Xingji exclaimed, "This guy's strength has increased again. I have to work harder, or I still can't beat him." Emotienga shook her head. "Fellow Taoist Jing, you'd better think of a more practical goal." "You're looking down on me," Jing Xingji said with grief and indignation. "Not bad, I can tell." Emotienga smiled and waved her sleeves, turning into a white light and rushing towards the other side of the river. Her appearance made the ghost cultivators in the ravine chaotic. Some of them sensed her breath and changed their direction to float towards her. Some of them still stuck to Qin Shi, and some of them drifted left and right as if they didn't know what to do. Facing the ghost cultivators blocking her way, a sword appeared in front of Emotienga. However, this sword was simple and unadorned, and its breath was gentle. It was the Fuxing sword. She pointed her finger, and a golden thunderbolt darted out and quickly wrapped around the Fuxing sword. With a crackling sound, the golden thunderbolt was immediately absorbed by the Fuxing sword. The momentum of the Fuxing sword suddenly changed, and its killing intent soared. The Fuxing sword covered by the golden thunderbolt was invincible. As long as the ghost cultivators got close to it, they would be turned into ashes by the thunder of heavenly tribulation. The others were speechless. Jing Xingji widened his eyes and said, "Are you kidding me? Could it be that I can't win against Qin Shoujing? And now I can't even win against his wife? Get over it." Nie Wushang patted him on the shoulder. "Most things in life don't go your way." As she spoke, she turned into a black cloud and slowly floated away. Jing Xingji shouted from behind her, "Hey, what's with that sympathetic tone of yours?" No one answered him. After Nie Wushang, Ling Yunhe, Yang Qingji, and Little Feng all rushed to the other side of the river. Even the rocks swayed and floated forward. Jing Xingji had no choice but to swing his sword and also fly out. Nie Wushang's black cloud was completely different from Master Songfeng's. Master Songfeng's was ruthless and full of dark aura, while hers was very gentle but had a stronger corrosive ability. Any ghost cultivator who chased after her was surrounded by her black cloud and slowly corroded until nothing was left. It was the same primordial devil great technique, but Yang Qingji's situation was completely different. He waved the ghost-faced banner in his hand, and a surge of devil aura lingered around his body, sweeping away all the ghost cultivators who approached him. Meanwhile, an exquisite pagoda floated above his head, emitting a dark but powerful aura. Under this aura, even nascent soul ghost cultivators were suppressed to the point of being unable to move. Heavenly Devil Pagoda was worthy of being the top magic weapon left behind by the most powerful devil cultivator in Yunzhong's history, a figure who was revered as the Devil Venerable. Ling Yunhe followed closely behind. At this time and place, facing so many ghost cultivators, Ling Yunhe didn't dare to hold back his strength. The moonlight sprinkled down, and all the ghost cultivators within its range screamed and disappeared. Compared to Heavenly Devil Pagoda, the soul-restraining bead was much more restrained. After being summoned by Ling Yunhe, it just floated in front of him, releasing a warm and stable light. However, under this light, the dead aura didn't invade, making Ling Yunhe calm and composed. Behind Ling Yunhe, Little Feng let out a cry and showed her true form. Her whole body was burning with flames, and her long tail feathers were gorgeous and dazzling. All the ghost cultivators who approached her were burned to ashes by the vermilion bird flames on her body. Jing Xingji, who wasn't far away from her, exclaimed, "Divine Bird Phoenix? Could it be a fated chance obtained in the vermilion bird sacrificial temple? Qin Shoujing, this guy, how can he be so lucky?" The ghost cultivators swarmed over like a swarm of bees. In an instant, Jing Xingji's aura changed greatly. Countless light swords circled around him, and the sword lights flickered with threatening sharpness. The ghost cultivators came head-on, and the light swords rose from the ground and slashed at them with the force of 1,000 caddies. Chi. Compared to the imposing manner, the commotion was much smaller. The light sword slashed down these ghostly cultivators with ease and dexterity. Meanwhile, Stone and Feifei, who were far away from them, were extremely leisurely. No ghost cultivators came to find trouble with them. Stone was originally a monster with 3 chis intertwined, so he was like a fish in water in this place. Feifei, on the other hand, was blessed by nature. These ghost cultivators instinctively treated it as a harmless existence. The 6 people and 1 beast used all kinds of methods to kill their way into the canyon. For a moment, ghost shadows danced around, and the dead aura surged. Gradually, the low-level ghost cultivators were all killed, and only ghost cultivators of nascent soul and above were left. She didn't count them just now, but now that she took a look, the number of nascent soul ghost cultivators in this canyon actually reached more than 100. Emotinga couldn't help but exclaim in surprise when she thought about how the ghost city in Windy Sand City, in the far west, also had more than 100 ghost cultivators. Are ghost cultivators' nascent souls so worthless? Why do they have nascent souls so easily? Qin Shi, who wasn't far from her, said while fighting the ghost cultivators. Why don't you take a look at how many there are, and how long they've been here? If human cultivators don't have a limited lifespan, there will be countless nascent souls. Emotinga couldn't help but nod when she heard what he said. On the path of human cultivators to the nascent soul realm, countless people had fallen in the middle, whether it was aptitude, comprehension, temperament, fated chances, or luck. Countless cultivators had fallen in front of every hurdle. In addition to all of these, there was also lifespan. Ghost cultivators and monster cultivators could use several times the time of human cultivators to make up for their shortcomings. But human cultivators had to be confined by their short lifespan. In other words, where there was gain, there was loss. Human cultivators had wisdom that monster cultivators couldn't reach in bodies that ghost cultivators couldn't compare to. So it was difficult for them to break through the shackles of their lifespan. Although heaven favored human beings, it still maintained a balance within a certain limit. Moreover, for some reason, these ghost cultivators in front of them didn't retain their consciousness. Instead, they became corpse-like existences, which couldn't be compared to human cultivators at all. Their group had magic weapons and secret techniques, so each of them could fight against a group of people alone. Their path was blocked, and everyone was caught in a fight. They unanimously chose to move closer to the others. They weren't here to kill ghost cultivators, so it was proper for them to stick together and go straight to Qin Shi. Little Feng was the fastest. As Qin Shi's spiritual beast, her first priority was to get close to Qin Shi. Therefore, she took advantage of the time when the others were killing ghost cultivators and borrowed their fame to reach Qin Shi's side without much effort. Master, come up, said Little Feng. Qin Shi had just killed 2 ghost cultivators, so he jumped onto Little Feng's back without much hesitation. Although he had strength to spare, flying in the air like this would waste a lot of spiritual aura to resist the attack of the dead aura. Little Feng was a bird, so flying was her instinct. It was much easier for her to carry him on her back. On Little Feng's back, Qin Shi's sword formation was activated again, forming a red sea. Little Feng cooperated with him and spat out the vermilion bird's flames, which burned the dead aura around them. Tienga! Qin Shi shouted and reached out his hand to her. Mo Tienga looked up and summoned the puppet. She gave the Fuxing sword to the puppet, took Qin Shi's hand, and got on Little Feng's back. The Fuxing sword also contained her golden lightning. Although the puppet didn't have spiritual intelligence, it was the easiest to command. Mo Tienga let it guard Little Feng and cooperate with Little Feng's vermilion bird's flames to release lightning from time to time. The ghost cultivators around them couldn't get close to them, so they didn't need to do anything. You two are opportunistic, Jing Xingji accused them as everyone gathered. Which one of them didn't try their best to kill the enemy? The 2 of them, on the other hand, sat on the back of their spiritual beasts and let the spiritual beasts and the puppets kill each other. They didn't even need to do anything. Fellow Taoist Jing. Mo Tienga waved the heaven and earth fan and said, Wise men use their mouths, but fools use their fists. You have to accept your fate. Before Jing Xingji could speak, Nia Wushang, who was leaning towards them, narrowed her eyes. You mean we're all fools? Chapter 639. Half a day had passed by the time they crossed the canyon. Although the strength of these ghost cultivators wasn't great, they had the advantage in numbers. 10 or so ghost cultivators surrounded one, and even if they couldn't defeat the ghost cultivator, they would exhaust the ghost cultivator to death. Moreover, the surrounding was filled with dead aura, so they had to split their attention to resist it. Finally, everyone gathered together and crossed the canyon in one go. Then they rested on the spot. Feifei, there's nothing behind us, right? Feifei answered while combing the hair on Stone's head. It seems. And we don't have to fight anymore. It's just a bit hard to walk. Complicated terrain? Nothing could be discussed if they didn't have to fight, so they didn't take it seriously. After resting for half a day, everyone recovered their spiritual aura and continued on their journey. Before long, they saw what Feifei said was a bit hard to walk. It was a huge karst cave, the top of which couldn't be seen. They entered the cave, made many turns, and went deep into the ground. Looking at the situation of this karst cave, it was as high as a small mountain. The problem with this karst cave wasn't its height, but the black water droplets that dripped or floated in the cave. These water droplets contained a strong aura similar to that of the underground river, but their corrosive intent was far stronger. "What's this?" Emotinga asked. Feifei spread her hands to show she didn't know. "Anyway, we can't touch it." She separated a strand of sword light and touched a mass of black water. In an instant, with a chi sound, the sword light and the black water collided with each other. The black water dissipated, but the sword light wavered for a while before stabilizing. "It's that powerful?" Emotinga was taken aback. Shi's sword light contained the vermilion bird's breath. The destructive and evil-suppressing intent within it was the nemesis of ghosts and devils. Yet it was actually corroded by this ordinary black water. Ling Yunhe frowned. With a stroke of his finger, a piece of moonlight flew out of his sleeve and hit a floating drop of black water. This time, there wasn't even a sound. The moonlight and the drop of water disappeared at the same time. Jing Xingji didn't believe it, so he also drew his sword and slashed at a drop of black water. The black water was cut, but a trace of black aura remained on his sword. Jing Xingji's natal sword had long been refined into his sword nascent soul. However, he was a sword cultivator, after all, so he had to look cool. From venerable sword cultivator to Gujian sect's new disciples, all of them liked to carry a sword on their back outside. Jing Xingji was no exception. The sword on his back was the original body of the still water sword. At this time it was corroded by the black water, and even his sword chi had become impure. He felt great regret, and hurriedly forced the black chi out. Nie Wuxiang also made her move to test the water. Her black cloud lightly propped up the water, allowing the black water to drip on it, and then drip down again. You're alright?" Emotinga was astonished. Nie Wuxiang said, "You don't remember? When I entered the Carefree Valley, I was also contaminated by the aura of death, but it was later swallowed by the aura of primordial devil. Perhaps it's from the same source, so the aura of death doesn't have a strong corrosive effect on me." She called the black cloud back and pushed it in front of her. Look, there were still traces left on the black clouds, but compared to them, they were much fainter. "What about fellow Taoist Yang?" Emotinga turned towards Yang Qingji. "You also cultivate the primordial devil art, so presumably you're the same, right?" Yang Qingji also made his move to give it a try. Sure enough, although he couldn't compare to Nie Wuxiang, the black water's corrosive effect on him was also greatly reduced. "Since you can maintain your strength, the matter of guarding will be left to you." Both Nie Wuxiang and Yang Qingji nodded in agreement. At present, it seemed that this part of the road might be more dangerous than the Ghost Cultivator's Canyon. These black water droplets either drifted or dripped down, and it was impossible to guard against them. If there was an accident, they might accidentally get contaminated by it. "Let's go. Let's try it first." After waiting for so long, Feifei was a little impatient. Stone also barked twice. Then he lifted Feifei down and held her in his palm. Using his body to block the surrounding black water, he stepped into the cave. Emotinga shook her head and also followed them in. There were water stains everywhere on the ground, and there were water droplets flying everywhere. It was more than just a bit difficult, as Feifei said. They didn't need to fight on this part of the road, but it was more exhausting. Emotinga used the art of primordial singular energy, as well as that immortal robe, and carefully walked through it. These black water droplets didn't have any pattern at all. In this karst cave, they simply did whatever they wanted. They were either like ordinary water droplets, dripping from the top. They gathered into a pool on the ground and consciously expanded and shrank. They simply shuttled around the karst cave like naughty children. Or they collided, merged, and separated in the air. Emotinga was almost amazed. These water droplets seemed to have a life of their own. Some were cheerful, some were calm, some were fanatical, and some were melancholic. They formed their own world. If one looked at them carefully, they seemed to be integrated into their world, following their joys, sorrows, and joys. Emotinga felt a chill in her chest and suddenly woke up. She looked around and saw that the others were more or less immersed in it. Only Nie Wuxiang and Yang Qingji were a bit clear-headed. Be careful, she shouted. There's something strange here. Everyone's spirits were instantly shaken, as if they had just woken up from a dream. Lingyan was shocked. What the hell is this? He was afraid the soul-restraining bead would be contaminated by the black water and corroded, so he put it away. But because he didn't have the soul-restraining bead to suppress his primordial spirit, these water droplets took advantage of his weakness and entered his primordial spirit. No one could answer this question. Feifei and Shirtu didn't have to worry at all and had long disappeared. The 6 people and 1 beast roused their spirits, and each used their unique skills. They all knew that even if they were corroded by the black water, they couldn't let their minds be bewitched. Once they lost their minds, it was the same as handing over their lives. Lingyan took out the soul-restraining bead and said, "Come closer." The soul-restraining bead has the effect of calming one's mind. Upon hearing that, the others all moved closer to Lingyan. The soul-restraining bead floated in the air. Under Lingyan's control, it shone brightly illuminating everything within a radius of several hundred feet. With the soul-restraining bead suppressing them, their spirits were shaken. The 6 people moved forward slowly. They had to prevent their minds from being bewitched, and also guard against the black water's corrosion. So they walked extremely slowly. When they walked several hundred feet, the water droplets behind them suddenly merged drop by drop at an extremely fast speed, gathering into a large pool of black water on the ground. The black water walked along a strange curve, drawing a head, a body, and hands and feet on the ground. When the humanoid figure was finished, it suddenly struggled, broke free from the ground's restraint and stood up. This black person formed by the black water seemed to be wearing a tight black skin. He had no hair, no facial features, no nails, and no hair. He only had pitch black skin that flowed like water. He twisted his arms and legs, then adjusted his direction, and walked towards the people in front of him, not making a sound as he walked. These people were very careful, but his speed was too fast. In just a flash, he had already attacked them. "Watch out!" Nie Wuxiang shouted. A black cloud was waved out, blocking the black person's attack. Seeing this thing, the others sucked in a mouthful of cold air. They only felt that this black water seemed to have a life, but they didn't expect it to really have a life. This person formed by the black water didn't have the slightest pressure from head to toe. It only had the black water's own destructive and filthy aura. If it wasn't for the fact that Nie Wuxiang's strength hadn't dropped too much, they probably wouldn't have sensed this attack at all. In an instant, everyone took out their magic weapons. "Step back," Nie Wuxiang shouted. "Let me and fellow Taoist Yang handle it." This black water's corrosive effect on them was too strong. If they got close, they'd be splashed by a few drops. And their strength would also drop. This wasn't something that could be recovered by resting for a day or two. Without the slightest hesitation, Mo Tiange and the others retreated several steps. Yang Qingji also didn't hesitate. He waved his ghost face banner, and primordial devil aura quickly swept towards the black person. "Let's go," Qingji said. "This place is disadvantageous to us. Staying here will only drag them down." The 4 people and 1 beast moved forward quickly, using all kinds of methods without hesitation. As long as they didn't corrode themselves and their natal magic weapons, they didn't care about other magic weapons. Destroying treasures was always better than destroying people. On this side, although the person formed by the black water had a bit of spiritual intelligence, it was far inferior to a human being. After being repeatedly swept by Yang Qingji's ghost face banner, it immediately became flustered. Upon seeing this, Nie Wuxiang raised her fist, gathered primordial devil aura, and threw a punch. She was a martial cultivator, so her punch was full of power. With a single punch, the black person shattered, but it still turned into countless black water droplets and scattered in all directions. She and Yang Qingji stood for a while. The water droplets around them were still floating around, but all of a sudden, a figure finished gathering behind her and stood up. "Behind you," Yang Qingji shouted. With a wave of his ghost face banner, a streak of primordial devil aura shot towards the black person. Nie Wuxiang turned around and threw another punch, shattering the black person. "This won't do. We can't kill it," Yang Qingji said with furrowed brows. Let's go. Nie Wuxiang nodded. Without hesitation, she followed behind him and ran forward. Not long after, they saw Imo Tiange and the others who had left earlier. They were surrounded by 3 to 5 black people. The 4 people and 1 beast were resisting while running away. Cut them off, Yang Qingji said. With a wave of his ghost face banner, a black person was quickly knocked down by him. Nie Wuxiang nodded and shouted, You guys go! The 4 people and 1 beast didn't stand on ceremony. After dealing with 2 black people, they left the rest to Imo Tiange and the others and quickly left. When they ran out of sight, Nie Wuxiang smashed a black person with a punch and said, Thank you. Yang Qingji's gaze changed. Thank me for what? Thank you for being willing to trust them. Nie Wuxiang looked at him and smiled. Originally, we wouldn't have said anything if you went first. Yang Qingji took advantage of the moment. He was facing the enemy to turn around. His pale face looked a bit unnatural, but his voice was cold and hard. You're not the only one who might have friends. Nie Wuxiang was stunned. In the next second, the corners of her mouth curved up, and her voice also carried a bit of joy. I talked too much. Sorry. The 2 of them no longer said anything. After dealing with these black people, they once again chased after the others. When they arrived, they still saw the same scene. They were surrounded by several black people, and their numbers were increasing. Everyone felt a bit powerless. They felt like they were punching cotton. These black people turned into water droplets with a single hit, and the water droplets turned into human beings after a while. As for them, they had cultivation levels and magic weapons, but because they were afraid of being corroded, they couldn't attack with all their strength. They could only run like this while Nie Wuxiang and Yang Qingji brought up the rear. Roar! Roar! A sound came from afar. Stone's silhouette slowly approached. Seeing that they were fighting with the black people, it was very surprised. Soon after, it stepped forward, pushed and threw a black person, smashing him into water droplets. It then pushed and threw them again. In a few breaths' time, all the black people were wiped out. The 6 people and 1 beast were a bit dumbfounded. Teaches. They were a group of nascent soul cultivators who were known as geniuses, as well as a divine beast with a noble bloodline. But they actually couldn't compare to a demonic beast that hadn't taken human form. Chapter 640. Led by Stone, they soon left the karst cave. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they saw the familiar boulders on the ground. There won't be any more problems, right? Imo Tiange said, but she didn't move. I don't think so. Feifei felt a little guilty. He was protected by Stone, so he didn't see the black water taking shape when he passed through the karst cave. So he thought there wouldn't be a fight. In the end, they were almost trapped inside, so he didn't have much confidence to say that. Imo Tiange didn't know what he was thinking, but she still cautiously released the puppet and went to test it. With a stiff expression, the puppet carried the Fuxing sword and walked step by step into the passage of the sacrificial temple. After walking for 300 to 500 feet, there was no movement. Everyone was finally relieved. Compared to other sacrificial temples, Black Tortoise's breath was much more restrained. Apart from the temple's heavy and simple style, it only vaguely revealed a sense of peace and vastness. Black Tortoise, water attribute, composition, born of extreme Yin, controlled all living things. Its body was a combination of a turtle and a snake, symbolizing continuous good fortune. Compared to the other 4 spirits, Azure Dragon symbolized tolerance and vitality, Vermilion Bird represented enthusiasm and vitality, White Tiger represented killing and violence, and Black Tortoise represented integration and good fortune. Its breath wasn't strong because water was everywhere in the world, but it hid in all things. Its breath also wasn't fierce because water's characteristic was to nourish all things. However, this Black Tortoise temple was different from other sacrificial temples. Its Black Tortoise's breath wasn't so pure. How could this be? Qingxi was the first to notice something was wrong. Although Imo Tiange, Jingxingji, and Feifei inherited the divine beast's breath, they couldn't use it as well as he did. He was the only one who completely integrated the Vermilion Bird's breath with his body, so he could feel the divine beast's breath more directly. The characteristic of the divine beast's breath was that it was superior to all breaths existing in the current cultivation world. So it was the purest. However, although Black Tortoise Temple was also vast and sacred, it seemed to have a trace of impurities. What's wrong? Jing Xingji asked blankly. Don't you think Black Tortoise's breath isn't pure? Qin Shi cast a sidelong glance at him. They didn't have a deep friendship before, so he didn't think so. Now that Jing Xingji stopped pretending in front of him, Qin Shi finally realized that this guy was smart, but he didn't like to use his brain in front of them. Now that he thought about it, for a person like Jing Xingji, how could he act like this if he didn't completely trust him? Thinking back, although he felt that Jing Xingji was a trustworthy person, he didn't like his behavior and manner. He didn't expect that after several hundred years, his cultivation level would rise higher and higher. Among his old friends, only Jing Xingji would reach Yuanying. Thinking up to this point, Qin Shi calmed down a bit. Black Tortoise Temple is obviously different from other sacrificial temples. Although there was also a ghost city beside the White Tiger, there wasn't any ghost chi seeping out, so it wasn't affected. Although the vermilion bird had devil chi, it belonged to the prime devil stone steel. The vermilion bird's aura and prime devil chi didn't interfere with each other. As for the black tortoise, it's obvious that he's been affected by other auras. Why did this happen? Jing Xingji continued to ask. Qin Shi paused for a moment, trying his best to smooth the blue veins on his forehead. However, his tone revealed his emotions. Please use your brain. I'm not your father. Everyone, Jing Xingji said. At our age, it'd be too difficult for you to be my father. You might be able to be my father-in-law. Everyone, stop talking nonsense. Let's go. Nie Wushang took the lead and stepped into the sacrificial temple. Mo Tiange followed closely behind her. When she passed by Jing Xingji, she stopped and looked him up and down like she was looking at her son-in-law. He looks okay, but he's a bit old. Jing Xingji grinned mischievously. Being old has its advantages. Mother-in-law, when will my fiancé be born? The Black Tortoise Temple was also made of neatly arranged boulders, but the color of the Black Tortoise Temple was darker and carried a cool aura. Moreover, this cool aura was mixed with a lot of indescribable auras. Mo Tiange wrinkled her brows. How long have these ghost cultivators been here? They've actually corroded the Black Tortoise's aura. At least, more than 100,000 years, right? Nie Wushang said. Carefree Valley is an ancient relic. So many corpses could only have been buried here, before the collapse of the Middle Ages era. Ling Yunhe agreed. Correct. Carefree Valley was a paradise in the Middle Ages era. So I'm guessing it was either sealed during the Middle Ages era, or it was destroyed at the end of the Middle Ages era. So these people all died in the canyon. Over 100,000 years, countless corpses, and the dead aura gathered in the canyon, gradually turning it into a world of ghost cultivators. Due to the change of the world and the collapse of the space, the former paradise was polluted by the filthy aura. These ghost cultivators lost their spiritual intelligence and became zombie-like existences. The fusion of many auras turned into a new kind of aura, which gradually eroded the Black Tortoise Temple here. After a long time, the Black Tortoise Temple became what it was today. After walking through the wide stone path, they saw a heavy stone door engraved with black totems and densely packed ancient murals, looking solemn and distant. They pushed the stone door open, and a strong divine beast's aura rushed into their faces. They saw a tall and spacious hall with thick stone pillars, and a silent statue at the end of the hall. A black serpent was coiled on the huge turtle's back, looking down at them with indifferent eyes. Let's go out, Yang Qingji said in a low voice. Nie Wushang nodded. The divine beast's aura here is too strong. We'd better avoid it. Be careful. Mo Tiange looked back and said. Since Demon Lord Moon Shadow knows about the existence of the temple, he probably found his old friends in Starfall City, and could come here at any time. The two of them nodded and went out. When they turned around, they saw Ling Yunhe looking pensive. Mo Tiange asked, Fellow Taoist Ling, is there something wrong? Ling Yunhe said. That year, Starfall City was uprooted by Demon Lord Night Frost. Almost no one escaped this disaster. How could fellow Taoist Tianqian and Demon Lord Moon Shadow run into survivors? Emotinga's expression was solemn. You mean, he said softly. I'm afraid this is Demon Lord Moon Shadow's trap. As soon as Ling Yunhe finished speaking, Emotinga felt something was wrong outside. She cultivated the soul refining art, so her divine sense was very sharp. Soon, she found someone else had entered the temple. Qin Shi, Jing Xingji, and the others all looked serious. Xiaofeng also frowned. They knew Ling Yunhe's guess was probably right. They had Shirtu with them, but it was already so difficult for them to reach this place. Now someone else had come in such a short time. It was obvious they had been prepared for a long time. Let's get our things first and meet up with fellow Taoist Nye and fellow Taoist Yang, Qin Shi said. Everyone nodded. They quickly left the hall and went to the back. Emotinga took some time to send a sound-transmitting talisman to Nye Wushang, telling them to come quickly. While following behind Qin Shi, Emotinga said in a low voice, Why did Devil Lord Yuing set up this trap? Demon Lord Moon Shadow's actions could be said to have mobilized a lot of people. In addition to him, there were 3 nascent soul cultivators, 7 or 8 nascent soul cultivators, and 20 or 30 early-stage cultivators. Among them, only Nye Wushang and Yang Qingji were devil cultivators, so they might have something he was interested in. If it was just for the 2 of them, why did he need to make such a big scene? Many people made things complicated. What if someone else took it? Hearing her words, Qin Shi said, In my opinion, he just took advantage of the situation. Oh, what do you mean? Qin Shi said, If we hadn't arrived in time, fellow Taoist Nye probably wouldn't have been able to escape. Why did he need to set a trap? I'm afraid Demon Lord Moon Shadow only used the fish in Starfall City to test whether she had the primordial devil great technique or not. As for the temple, he just mentioned it casually. Emotinga thought about it and nodded. Without the primordial devil stone tablet, the temple wasn't very valuable to devil cultivators. For Demon Lord Moon Shadow, it was only valuable to gain Nye Wushang's trust. She continued, In the end we arrived. He couldn't defeat us, and knew we were coming to the temple. So he simply spread the news, and called a group of nascent soul cultivators to fight with us for the Black Tortoise. Then he dealt with Nye Wushang himself, and snatched the primordial devil great technique. There's also Yang Qingji, Qin Shi added. If he confirmed that Nye Wushang practiced the primordial devil great technique, then there's no need to mention Yang Qingji. Their devil auras were similar. If he confirmed one, he could confirm the other. Emotinga was stunned and asked, If that's the case, isn't it the same for him to snatch Yang Qingji? It's not the same. Qin Shi shook his head with a smile. Yang Qingji is Guifang Devil Lord's disciple, and the master of the Devil Venerable's holy object. Fellow Taoist Ling also said he easily defeated a middle-stage cultivator. Demon Lord Moon Shadow lost a refined corpse, so it's not easy to deal with him. Besides, other people might not know about fellow Taoist Yang's personality, but how could we not? He's watertight. I'm afraid it'll be hard for Demon Lord Moon Shadow to stop him. Emotinga couldn't help but laugh when she recalled the dozens of years in the Immortal Palace in the returning ruined sea. Wasn't Yang Qingji guarding the primordial Devil Stone Cave, and not coming out to guard against them? Fellow Taoist Yang, because of his outstanding talent, had been a thorn in the side of his senior martial brothers and sisters since he was a child. His growth was a history of fighting against all kinds of conspiracies, so he was very experienced in dealing with this kind of situation. It was just that this time, the enemy was a bit stronger. However, Demon Lord Moon Shadow didn't expect that Wushang's master wasn't inferior to Guifang Devil Lord, and his experience was more complicated than Yang Qingji's. It wasn't easy to catch Wushang. Qin Shi smiled. Yes, otherwise he wouldn't have waited until we arrived. As they spoke, they went through the last stone door and saw a huge square. Emotinga had seen the Azure Dragon sacrificial temple. Inside it was a complete Azure Dragon skeleton. In the Vermilion Bird sacrificial temple, the Vermilion Bird's remains had been made into the Vermilion Bird bow and enshrined in the sacrificial temple. The White Tiger sacrificial temple was different. The whole White Tiger was preserved intact, and its body belonged to Feifei. The White Tiger Pearl, which gathered the white tiger's breath, recognized Jing Xingji as its master. Now in the square of this black tortoise sacrificial temple, there was a glowing blue pearl floating. The water inside the pearl was billowing, as if it contained the whole world. They couldn't be more familiar with this pearl. Aside from the difference in color and breadth, it looked exactly the same as the white tiger pearl. This is the black tortoise pearl? Jing Xingji said. It should be. Let's quickly subdue it, or it'll fall into someone else's hands. Right after they finished talking, Nie Wushang and Yang Qingji ran over. The two of them were devil cultivators, so they didn't dare to come close. They just stood at the door. Yang Qingji even summoned the heavenly devil tower and turned to face the stone path. Mo Tiange understood what they meant. They wanted to block the people behind them. Mo Tiange didn't have time to be moved. She summoned Xiaofan and said, "The black tortoise's attribute is water. I reckon you'll have to practice a water attribute cultivation technique to be able to trigger the black tortoise's breath and make it recognize you as its master. However, this is only my personal opinion. We can try it together." Ling Yunhe nodded. "That's natural. The opportunity belongs to everyone." Jing Xingji said, "I only have metal spiritual roots, so I probably won't be able to do it. Besides, I already have the white tiger's breath, so I won't fight with you guys." Right after he said that, he retreated and went to guard the door with Yang Qingji and Nie Wushang. Qin Shi also shook his head and said, "I also don't have water spiritual roots. You guys can do it." There was no need to mention Xiaofeng. She was now a genuine descendant of a divine beast, so how could she possibly inherit another divine beast's breath? In the end, only Mo Tiange, Ling Yunhe and Xiaofan, who was released from the spiritual beast bracelet, remained. "Fellow Taoist Ling," Mo Tiange said with a smile, "I also have water spiritual roots, so I have to fight with you." Chapter 641. Yang Qingji guarded the main entrance. Nie Wushang stood silently on the side, and Jing Xingji and Qin Shi were a little further inside. The four of them stood in the most suitable positions, unsheathed their swords, and took out their magic weapons, ready to fight. With such a formation, even great cultivators in the late nascent soul stage couldn't easily enter. Mo Tiange, Ling Yunhe, and Xiaofan surrounded the black tortoise pearl, guarding Little Feng and the puppet not far away, and Stone hiding far away with Feifei on its back. Feifei was only at the 7th rank, and Stone hadn't transformed, so they'd better not get involved in this situation. "Master." The water breath of the black tortoise pearl attracted Xiaofan. It looked at the black tortoise pearl, drooling. "Can this be eaten?" Mo Tiange raised her eyebrows. "Do you want to eat it?" Xiaofan drooled. "It looks delicious." Mo Tiange smiled. Xiaofan was a sea dragon, but different from the azure dragon of the wood attribute. It was a spirit beast of the water attribute, so the breath of the black tortoise was very attractive to it. "Fellow Taoist Ling, let's do it quickly," Mo Tiange said. Ling Yunhe took a step back. "Fellow Taoist Mo, please go first." Mo Tiange didn't know whether he did this because he was grateful or for other reasons, but she didn't like to refuse, so she nodded and said, "Then I won't be polite." Then, she operated the art of origin and grabbed the black tortoise pearl. The black tortoise pearl was successfully caught in Mo Tiange's hand and suddenly shone. Mo Tiange only felt a little dizzy. In an instant, she felt that countless things flowed through her mind, as if she had experienced time since ancient times, and she was drowned by the overwhelming water spiritual aura. After a long time, she suddenly woke up and looked down. The breath of the black tortoise wrapped around her whole arm. At this moment, it stopped, and the black tortoise pearl flew out of her hand uncontrollably, still floating in the air. Mo Tiange felt it was a pity. She had never practiced a water attribute cultivation technique, and only had the art of the origin, so she couldn't make it recognize her as its master, and could only borrow the breath of the black tortoise. "It's coming." At the other end of the stone path, a figure appeared. Yang Qingji shouted in a low voice and pointed at the space between his eyebrows. The heavenly devil tower started to spin above his head, and the devil aura in the surroundings all rushed towards the heavenly devil tower. Even Nie Wushang was somewhat unable to control her own devil aura. Only after seeing this did they understand why Yang Qingji was able to easily defeat that mid-stage demonic cultivator. The heavenly demon tower could control the surrounding demonic qi, and any demonic cultivator would be affected. The person who came was Demon Lord Yuing. Accompanying him was Old Donkey Ma, the loose cultivator from Yunzhong. Demon Lord Moon Shadow was at the front, and Old Donkey Ma was riding his donkey upside down, following closely behind. His old face was still smiling like a chrysanthemum flower. Accompanied by the ding-ling-ling sounds, he slowly walked over. When the bell rang in their ears, everyone's mind was in a mess. They hurriedly guarded their minds. The Moon Shadow Demon Lord had just neared when he heard Yang Qingji shout. The heavenly demon tower suddenly attacked the Moon Shadow Demon Lord. After that, Jing Xingji, thousands of sword lights, like a broken silver bottle, suddenly pierced out. Demon Lord Moon Shadow didn't slow down at all. He clenched his hands, and the demonic qi spread. The refined corpse rushed forward. There's no time. Mo Tinga turned her head and said, "Fellow Taoist Ling, if you don't mind, my spiritual beast will try with you. What do you think?" Ling Yunha nodded. Okay. Just now, when Mo Tinga easily grabbed the black tortoise pearl, his heart skipped a beat. He thought he missed the fated chance again, and he secretly regretted it. It wasn't until the black tortoise pearl automatically broke free that he heaved a sigh of relief. He secretly smiled bitterly. At first, he thought Mo Tinga didn't cultivate a water element technique, and he cultivated the Ice Palace's sect guarding technique, the ice and fire technique. So his chances of getting the black tortoise pearl to recognize him as its master were much higher. That was why he generously gave the opportunity to Mo Tinga. After this, he felt it was better not to pretend to be generous in the future. Xiaofan, Mo Tinga patted Xiaofan's head. If you want to eat it, then eat it. However, you have to compete with fellow Taoist Ling to see who the black tortoise pearl recognizes as its master. Oh. Xiaofan nodded obediently and happily rushed towards the black tortoise pearl. Mo Tinga said, "Fellow Taoist Ling, please." Ling Yunha didn't stand on ceremony. He waved his sleeve, and countless moonlight fragments on it turned into clear light. Then, half of his body was covered in flames, and the other half was wrapped in mysterious ice. He reached out to the black tortoise pearl. This was Mo Tinga's first time seeing the ice and fire technique in full display. Thinking back to the vermilion bird sacrificial temple, it was completely different from today. Presumably, Ling Yunha's ice and fire technique hadn't reached the advanced level at that time. If the Sea of Returning Ruins appeared today, Ling Yunha would have formed his nascent soul, and it would be hard to say who the vermilion bird bow would belong to. Thinking of this, Mo Tinga felt a bit lucky. Fortunately, they caught up in time and got a spiritual communicating magic weapon for free. The black tortoise pearl stopped between Xiaofan and Ling Yunha. The mysterious ice formed by the ice and fire technique was clear and pure, and the water element spiritual aura on Xiaofan's body was incomparably abundant. Under the influence of these two, the black tortoise pearl suddenly burst into brilliance. Xiaofan and Ling Yunha were fighting for the black tortoise pearl at the entrance. Yang Qingji and Jing Xingji joined hands. The heavenly devil tower suppressed Yuing Devil Master. The ghost face banner repelled the refined corpses, and thousands of sword lights pressed down like snow. Yuing Devil Master couldn't move an inch forward for a while. After being repelled, Yuing Devil Master's eyes flashed. He said, "Fellow Taoist Ma, the divine beast's object is about to be taken away by them. Are you still going to stand by and watch?" Old Donkey Ma, who was behind him, didn't answer. He just chuckled and patted the donkey he was riding. The donkey soared into the sky and leaped towards them, ignoring the sword lights as if they were nothing. This donkey only looked like a donkey, but it was actually a rare spiritual beast. Its 4 snow-white hooves drew marvelous trajectories in the air, and the surrounding space fluctuated strangely. Jing Xingji felt his eyes were blurred. The sword lights were clearly still there, but the donkey carrying Old Donkey Ma passed through his sword lights and leaped over the stone door. Qin Shi frowned. The sword formation he had prepared a long time ago came crashing down. Old Donkey Ma separated from his donkey. The donkey rolled and turned into a black-clothed boy. The black-clothed boy ignored Qin Shi and threw a string of bells at Nie Wushang. We haven't seen each other for many years. Fellow Taoist Qin's cultivation has improved again. Old Donkey Ma said with a smile. The new generation really surpasses the old. I didn't expect the younger generation to be so outstanding. Old guys like us will soon have nowhere to go. Although he said that, Old Donkey Ma's movements weren't slow. He gently waved his whip, and countless wind blades appeared out of thin air, easily blocking Qin Shi's sword formation. Late nascent soul cultivators were indeed extraordinary. A thought flashed through Qin Shi's mind. With a wave of his sleeve, the vermilion bird's flames gushed out continuously, and once again formed a sword formation. We haven't seen each other for many years. Senior, you're still as elegant as ever. How could we juniors dare to compare with you? Qin Shi asked himself honestly. He believed he had the strength to compete with late nascent soul cultivators. But if it was a life and death battle, he would be slightly inferior. The higher one's cultivation level was, the harder it was to kill an enemy with a higher cultivation level. Early nascent soul cultivators might be fake, but late nascent soul cultivators were all genuine top cultivators in the human realm. Whether it was their means or temperament, they were all first class. Facing Qin Shi's sword formation, Old Donkey Ma didn't seem to be in a difficult position. He swung his whip again, and flowers made of countless wind blades suddenly appeared in the air, slowly blooming. This flower appeared without a sound and was formless, but it was beautiful beyond compare. Every petal was formed by wind blades, and they spun rapidly, bringing with them a faintly discernible chill. Anything that approached would be silently shredded into pieces. It was truly a top-notch method to deal with a sinister person. The wind flowers collided with the sea of swords. The red sword lights emitted several puff, puff, puff sounds, like candlelight being gently blown out. Qin Shi's pupils shrank, and another sword light swam out from his sleeve. This sword light was inconspicuous, and no different from other sword lights. In fact, this sword light contained an extremely thick vermilion bird's breath. It was the main body of the three-yong real fire sword. Old Donkey Ma's wind flowers bloomed more and more. In just a flash, they covered half of the square, even affecting Nie Wushang. Xiaofeng, go help them. Seeing that, Mo Tiange waved her heaven and earth fan, and golden lightning shot out, weaving into a dense net of lightning, firmly protecting Xiaofan and Lingyan. At the same time, she controlled the puppet to move forward, and slashed at Old Donkey Ma. Fuxing's sword was originally of the thunder attribute, and Mo Tiange attached the golden lightning tribulation to it, greatly increasing its power. Although it wasn't as good as the heavenly demon tower, it was still a rare top-grade flying sword. Although it had the cultivation level of the nascent soul realm, it couldn't compare to a real nascent soul cultivator. However, because of Fuxing's sword, it wasn't inferior to an ordinary nascent soul cultivator at all. With one slash, Fuxing's sword slashed out a thunderbolt. Even Old Donkey Ma didn't dare to take it head-on and retreated. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Qin Shi attacked with the sword formation, smashing most of the wind flowers. Taking advantage of his victory, he secretly hid the main body of the three-yong real fire sword. On the other side, Yang Qingji and Jing Xingji were fighting evenly with Demon Lord Yuying. Originally, Demon Lord Yuying's strength wasn't limited to this, but he was restrained by Yang Qingji's heavenly demon tower, so he couldn't display his full strength. Jing Xingji was a sword cultivator, so he actually suppressed Demon Lord Yuying to the point that he couldn't use his divine power. While their fight was in full swing, Mo Tiange keenly sensed that someone else had entered the sacrificial temple. She turned around and saw that Xiaofan and Ling Yunhe were still engrossed in subduing the pearl of black tortoise. As if it was stimulated by their breaths, the pearl of black tortoise shone brightly, but it still floated steadily in the air, unable to be subdued by them. Mo Tiange's heart sank. It's been so long, but the pearl of black tortoise still hasn't been subdued. Could it be that the two of us aren't strong enough to make it recognize us as its master? After taking a closer look, she was somewhat stunned. This pearl of black tortoise indeed hadn't been subdued by them, but it wasn't like her. She couldn't sense it. Instead, it was moving left and right. The glowing blue ball of light spun rapidly. Sometimes it moved towards Ling Yunhe, and sometimes it moved towards Xiaofan, as if it was being pulled here and there by them. Could it be that both of them can subdue the pearl of black tortoise? As soon as this thought emerged, Mo Tiange became nervous. If they couldn't subdue it, it would be fine. But if they could subdue it, it would be too much of a pity if they couldn't. As time slowly passed, the pearl of black tortoise slowly floated towards Ling Yunhe. This time Xiaofan couldn't pull it back. Mo Tiange sighed and put away her regret. Never mind, at least it's Ling Yunhe's and not someone else's. But it's a pity for Xiaofan. If he could swallow the pearl of black tortoise, maybe he could advance in one go and break through the transformation realm. Just as she was thinking about this, Xiaofan might have become anxious. It opened its big mouth and bit it. Of course, it couldn't really bite the pearl of black tortoise. That wouldn't be competing but robbing. Xiaofan was only releasing its water spiritual aura. Its action was effective. The pearl of black tortoise suddenly stopped and was pulled into an oval shape. Then, under the three people's astonished gazes, it slowly separated into two and flew into Xiaofan's mouth and Ling Yunhe's hand respectively. Mo Tiange was stunned for a moment. She muttered to herself, "This also works." Chapter 642. Xiaofan swallowed the black tortoise pearl and smacked her lips with satisfaction. "Delicious. Unfortunately, I didn't taste it." "How could it be delicious if it didn't taste it?" Mo Tiange knocked its head and said, "Take your time to taste the spirit beast bracelet." Then she pulled it back. Mo Tiange turned around and asked, "Feifei, what about you?" Feifei held the stone and mumbled for a while before saying, "Let's go in." Mo Tiange nodded and waited for them to run over. She then pulled them into the spirit beast bracelet. The spirit beast bracelet could store 10 spiritual beasts. Right now, Xiaofan, Feifei, and even the stone only had 4. Figures appeared again at the end of the stone path. There were 7 or 8 nascent soul cultivators. Mo Tiange saw Devil Monarch Night Frost, Venerable Xuxiang, Jiewu, and Han Shizhi. Ling Yan imitated Xiaofan and swallowed half of the black tortoise pearl. Then with a wave of its sleeve, moonlight essence flew out. Mo Tiange also moved. With a wave of her heaven and earth fan, the thunder net turned back into a ball of golden lightning and flew back into the heaven and earth fan. Then with another wave, it turned into a bolt of lightning and shot towards Old Donkey Ma. Old Donkey Ma quickly retreated. A huge wind flower suddenly appeared, its blooming petals colliding with the golden lightning. "Isn't this little friend Mo?" Old Donkey Ma smiled. Mo Tiange looked at the dreamy wind flower around her, and then at Old Donkey Ma's dried chrysanthemum face. She had a strange feeling. She said, "Senior Ma, it's been many years. How have you been?" "Hee." Old Donkey Ma's chrysanthemum face narrowed so much that his eyes couldn't be seen. "How can I compare to you? I've never heard of you advancing from the core formation realm to the middle stage of the nascent soul realm in 50 years. As soon as he finished speaking, a wind flower suddenly appeared where she stood. With a crackling sound, the lightning net fell down. Mo Tiange's figure dissipated into nothingness, and her real body appeared 10 feet away. Meanwhile, a lightning net wrapped the Feng Hua in her original spot, unexpectedly annihilating the Feng Hua. The smile on Old Donkey Ma's face disappeared. It seemed easy, but in fact, this wind flower was the foundation of the secret technique. Just now, he secretly decided to capture Mo Tiange in one fell swoop. First, half of his black tortoise pearl had been swallowed by her spiritual beast. Second, if she was seriously injured, she would definitely be flustered. He never expected that she would actually dodge his attack so easily. What kind of opportunity did this junior encounter in the Immortal Palace? She had only formed her nascent soul for a little more than 50 years, yet she could actually compete with him, a great cultivator who had accumulated many years. Before he had the time to think, the sword formation came crashing down again. He waved his whip, and just like before, the wind flowers bloomed, forcing the sword formation away. Unexpectedly, an inconspicuous sword light suddenly burst out, broke through his wind flower, and pierced towards him at lightning speed. With a soft chi sound, Old Donkey Ma looked down and saw a bloody hole in his chest. The wound made a sizzling sound. Qin Shi's 3-yang real fire sword found the most suitable opportunity to penetrate his body, and the vermilion bird's flame took this opportunity to invade his body. Old Donkey Ma threw his whip. This inconspicuous thin whip paused in the air and swung on its own. Every time it swung, the air became stagnant. After 3 or 4 swings, Mo Tiange and Qin Shi felt the air became obscure. Whether it was the heaven and earth fan, or the 3-yang real fire sword, they all stopped there and couldn't be swung out. The gourd on old Donkey Ma's back flew up and fell into his hand. He pulled out the cork and drank a mouthful. In an instant, the wounds on his body healed at a speed visible to his body and disappeared quickly. Physical injuries weren't that serious for nascent soul cultivators, but he was actually able to expel the vermilion bird's flame so easily. It wasn't simple. She really didn't know what kind of spiritual medicine was in this gourd that could even expel the vermilion bird's flame. After 5 swings, the thin whip stopped, and old Donkey Ma's injuries were also healed. Qin Shi gave her a meaningful look and Mo Tiange nodded. With a wave of the heaven and earth fan, an azure dragon soared and let out a roar. It opened its mouth and spat out a ball of golden lightning. The golden lightning quickly spread out and enveloped old Donkey Ma. Right after that, the wind flower bloomed, but the azure dragon didn't disappear. Instead, it curled towards old Donkey Ma. Old Donkey Ma turned pale with fright. When he saw the azure dragon, he thought it was just an image of a secret technique, so he didn't take it seriously. Unexpectedly, after the astonishing power of the golden lightning, the overwhelming azure dragon's breath surged towards him. Only then did he realize this wasn't as simple as a secret technique. These azure dragon's breaths were vast and sacred, seeming to contain endless vitality. Their powerful might almost made it difficult for him, a great late-stage nascent soul cultivator, to withstand them. Old Donkey Ma secretly clenched his teeth. These 2 juniors must have guessed that the magic weapon that could freeze space couldn't be used frequently, so they immediately attacked him after he used the petrifying whip. Just as they guessed, he had to rest for several months after using the petrifying whip once. Just now, he accidentally fell into their trap and had to use the petrifying whip in advance. So he was in such a passive position now. Thoughts flashed through old Donkey Ma's mind, and he took out a glittering talisman. He drew a few strokes in the air with his fingers and lightly touched the talisman. The talisman suddenly burst out a dazzling golden light and turned into an incomparably mysterious rune. Seeing this, Mo Tiange's figure flashed, and she used instant movement. The jade bone puppet took a step forward, and the supporting life sword flashed with lightning as it slashed down with an indomitable posture. Ling Yunhe, who had been watching from the side, also saw this opportunity and took out the soul-restraining pearl. At this time, another powerful aura appeared, containing destruction and heat. Old Donkey Ma shifted his gaze and saw Qin Shi pulling a simple longbow burning with raging flames. He was instantly shocked. He was an individual cultivator, so he was the most cunning in fights of magical powers. Just now, when Mo Tiange attacked repeatedly, he knew she was deliberately restraining him so that Qin Shi could attack her. He also secretly prepared a backup plan, planning to beat her at her own game and counterattack. However, as soon as the vermilion bird bow appeared, he knew his backup plan couldn't stop it. He made a prompt decision and whistled. The black-clothed boy who was fighting with Nie Wushang rolled on the ground, revealed his true form, and ran away with old Donkey Ma on his back. Speaking of which, this donkey was really amazing. His 4 hooves seemed to have the ability to distort space. It was precisely because of this magic that Nie Wushang couldn't defeat him even after a long time, even though she was completely suppressing him. At this time, old Donkey Ma and the donkey, with the help of the donkey's 4 hooves, once again broke through the blockade of Jing Xingji's sword light, rushed out of the stone path, and disappeared like a wisp of smoke. Old Donkey Ma, Demon Monarch Moon Shadow, was furious. He knew this old guy couldn't be relied on. Once there was danger, he ran faster than anyone else. Now that he was left here alone, was he supposed to let him take another arrow? Demon Monarch Moon Shadow glared at Nie Wushang ferociously, then flung his cloak. The cloak left his body and turned into crows that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, rushing towards Jing Xingji and Yang Qingji. As for Demon Monarch Moon Shadow, he took advantage of this opportunity to escape with his refined corpse. Asterisk asterisk asterisk, that's it? Jing Xingji mumbled. Qin Shi put away the vermilion bird bow. If I don't do this, what else do you want? Seeing that more people were coming, he knew old Donkey Ma wasn't someone who would take risks easily, so he deliberately used the vermilion bird bow to scare him. Sure enough, old Donkey Ma was scared away. Demon Monarch Moon Shadow was alone. He couldn't defeat them, so he could only run away with them. In fact, this time, they were able to beat the two late nascent soul cultivators so smoothly because they had the advantage of the terrain. Yang Qingji and Jing Xingji were blocking the entrance, so Demon Monarch Moon Shadow couldn't enter. The two late nascent soul cultivators couldn't join hands, so they had no way to defeat them one by one. Even now, Emotinga still felt that it was a close call. If old Donkey Ma wasn't timid and fought to the death with the two late nascent soul cultivators, it would be hard to say what would have happened. However, now that Demon Monarch Moon Shadow and old Donkey Ma ran away, other people came. Emotinga sighed. There were so many people. How many fights would they have to fight? She took out a restorative panacea and stuffed it into her mouth. She also conveniently replaced the crystal jades on the puppets. Just as she finished, those people arrived. As soon as these nascent soul cultivators arrived, they saw Demon Monarch Moon Shadow and old Donkey Ma joining hands and fighting with them. Just as they had their own thoughts, either to help one side or to watch from the sidelines. Who knew that old Donkey Ma and the others would be scared away after taking only a few steps? This time, everyone's thoughts changed again. Even Demon Monarch Moon Shadow and old Donkey Ma couldn't defeat them. Were these people really that strong? Who should they join hands with? Or should they just give up? Just as they were thinking, old Donkey Ma suddenly turned his head and shouted, "Everyone, they've already taken Black Tortoise's relic. Do as you see fit." After he finished speaking, he rode his donkey and disappeared. Old Donkey Ma's shout made all the nascent soul cultivators' eyes brighten. Emotinga smiled bitterly. Old Donkey Ma, this old guy. Even after he ran away, he still caused trouble for them. Everyone. Qin Shi took a step forward and looked at them seriously. I won't hide it from you. Black Tortoise has already recognized its master. You're too late. Old Donkey Ma already said it. It was useless to deny it now. So Qin Shi simply told them the truth. They had already shown their strength. Even two late-stage nascent soul cultivators joining hands couldn't do anything to them. How could these scattered cultivators snatch Black Tortoise from them? It was better to threaten them with words. Sure enough, the cultivators hesitated. After a while, Nan Guitian suddenly smiled and asked, "May I ask, who is the master of Black Tortoise's relic?" Under their burning gazes, Ling Yunhe pursed his lips and took a few steps forward. He cupped his hands and said, "Fellow Taoists, I'm the master of Black Tortoise." Once he finished speaking, everyone's gaze fell on him. Nan Guitian narrowed his eyes. "It's fellow Taoist Ling." Emotinga was dumbfounded. Ling Yunhe actually took everything on himself and didn't drag her into this. In fact, he could have said the other half was on her spiritual beast Xiaofan. With Juyan Sek's foundation in Yunzhong, these cultivators would definitely focus on her, and he would be able to escape smoothly. But now, Ling Yunhe said Black Tortoise recognized him as its master. These cultivators would inevitably be restrained because of Juyan's sect. Should they snatch it or not? If they snatched it, they would offend Juyan's sect. Moreover, these people were so strong. Whether they could snatch it or not was still a problem. If they didn't snatch it, would they just watch the treasure fly away in front of them? This wasn't the right attitude for cultivation. While everyone was struggling, they suddenly heard a chuckle. They turned around and saw that it was Han Shiji. After advancing to the nascent soul realm, Han Shiji's appearance didn't change much. The gloominess that often haunted his eyes was gone. Instead, he seemed more modest and refined. In fact, everyone in Yunzhong knew that arrogance was Han Shiji's true nature. At that moment, Han Shiji said unhurriedly, "When the treasure is in front of you, you'll have to rely on your own abilities. Isn't this the rule of the cultivation world? When did everyone become so courteous?" Chapter 643. When Han Shiji finished speaking, a few of them fixed their eyes on him with a hint of viciousness. That's right, this was the rule of the cultivation world. Juyin sect had been the #1 sect in Yunzhong for tens of thousands of years. Did the other cultivators not fight with them in these tens of thousands of years? Of course not. Stealing treasures was one thing, but making enemies was a personal grudge. The sects never cared too much about it. Even if they took 10,000 steps back and Juyin sect really targeted them, they could just avoid them. If they really pressed forward and cut off their path of survival, the cultivators of Yunzhong would gang up on them. Beside him, Zhu Wu was a little hesitant. He said, "But the treasure has already recognized its master. How can we steal it?" Han Shiji glanced at him. He really didn't like Zhu Wu's gentle and weak personality. He said, "Master. If it doesn't have a master, wouldn't it be fine?" When he finished speaking, his gaze on Ling Yunhe became even more malicious. Ling Yunhe stopped smiling and his expression darkened. Moonlight essence turned into a jade knife again, and he held it in his hand. "If you want to fight, then don't waste your breath." "Hee Ling boy, I like your personality." Supremacy Void Aspect shouted and stepped forward with his staff. Come. I won't bully you. Come at me together." Before Ling Yunhe could move, Demon Lord Night Frost, who had his arms crossed, snickered. "I say, monk, don't you think too highly of yourself? Didn't you see that old zombie and old donkey ma run away?" "Heh," Supremacy Void Aspect immediately said. "Then why don't you come with me? If we take care of these juniors, let's see if old you and old donkey ma still dare to be arrogant in front of us in the future." "They've never dared to be arrogant in front of me," Yi Shuang said lightly. She glanced at Han Shiji. "Besides, as a late-stage nascent cultivator, there's no reason for me to be the vanguard for juniors." Hearing this, Supremacy Void Aspect touched his head and smacked his lips. "Old Yi, why do I feel like there's something wrong with what you said?" Demon Monarch Night Frost raised the corner of his lips, a flash of helplessness on his cold face. "Monk, it's not easy for you to cultivate to the late stage." Venerable Void Phase nodded seriously. "Of course, but you've said it many times already. But every time I see you, I can't help but say it." Night Frost Demon Monarch sighed. "Forget it. If you want to fight, fight. Don't call me. What a pity." Supremacy Void Aspect muttered. He thought for a moment before asking, "Old Yi, are you not interested? Or are you just waiting to reap the benefits?" Night Frost Demon Lord could not help but knock her forehead. She leaned against the stone wall and said, "What divine beast inheritance? It's useless to us demonic cultivators. Why should I join in the fun?" Then you, having been asked too many questions, Night Frost Demon Monarch glanced at him coldly. "Can I just watch?" Yes. Venerable Void Phase nodded repeatedly. His temper was a little explosive, but he knew who he could and could not afford to offend. He turned his attention to Ling Yunhe and the others. "Juniors come." Mo Tiange looked at Demon Monarch Night Frost, and happened to meet her eyes. She nodded with a smile. The corners of Demon Monarch Night Frost's mouth curved slightly, looking like she was smiling. "You're still not coming?" After waiting for a long time, and seeing that they didn't make a move, Venerable Void Phase couldn't help but ask, "What are you doing? Are you afraid?" Ling Yunhe sighed and asked, "Senior Void Phase, do you really want to snatch the treasure or join in the fun?" "I want to join in the fun, and I want to snatch the treasure," Venerable Void Phase said firmly. Ling Yunhe's expression turned solemn. "Then Junior won't be polite." Right after he finished speaking, his crescent moon jade knife suddenly moved like lightning. At the same time he retreated. The soul-confining bead floating above his head suddenly shone brightly. Venerable Void Phase didn't move. He clasped his palms together, and a golden light burst out from them. Instantly, the image of a benevolent Buddha with his palms also clasped together appeared and merged with him. Wisdom King Physique. Ling Yunhe narrowed his eyes and waved his sleeves, withdrawing the moonlight. However, the soul-confining bead above his head became even brighter. Wisdom King Physique was a commonly used Buddhist defensive technique. Almost every Buddhist disciple knew it, but only a few of them could cultivate it to the top level. At Venerable Void Phase's level, ordinary techniques wouldn't be able to harm him, unless they were Wisdom King physique. Therefore, Ling Yunhe simply withdrew his magic weapon and used the soul-confining bead to attack with his powerful divine comprehension. Hey, this is really a treasure. Venerable Void Phase's eyes lit up when he saw the soul-confining bead. But he said, if old man Yuanmu used it, this monk really wouldn't be able to block it. What a pity. Before he could finish speaking, a sword ray flickering with golden lightning slashed down. With a ripping sound, it tore a hole in the Buddhist light. Venerable Void Phase turned around and saw Imo Tiange smiling at him. Senior Void Phase, what's a pity? Venerable Void Phase originally thought it was a pity that Ling Yunhe's cultivation level wasn't high enough. But he didn't expect these people would actually help him. Imo Tiange's attack was like poking a hornet's nest. Nanguitian and Taoist Rui signaled each other with their eyes and attacked together. Nanguitian flicked his right hand, and a coin flew high up. It suddenly enlarged and flew towards Ling Yunhe. 5 small flags of different colors appeared in front of Taoist Rui. They were arranged in a strange way. He waved them lightly, and the 5 flags began to rotate at different speeds. The spiritual aura in the surroundings also began to fluctuate. Clang! Nanguitian's coin was hit by Jing Xingji's sword ray. The others were also ready to attack. There was a late nascent soul cultivator, and 2 middle nascent soul cultivators. Other cultivators might also take this opportunity to attack. So now wasn't the time to hold back. Imo Tiange's gaze fell on Taoist Rui. She knew how terrifying a nascent soul formation master, who could arrange formations on the spot and affect the movement of spiritual aura in the surroundings was. If it wasn't for Tian Jiqian, Ling Yunfei would never have dared to set up a killing trap against Ling Yunhe. Senior martial brother, she called out. Qinshi knew what she wanted to say, so his 3-yong real fire sword went straight towards Taoist Rui. At that moment, the nascent soul cultivators swarmed over like a swarm of bees. Everyone understood that this was their best time to fish in troubled waters. They might become the winners. With their strength, they didn't have the qualifications to watch with folded arms. There were only 2 people who didn't move, Demon Monarch Night Frost and Ju Wu. Demon Monarch Night Frost leaned against the stone wall with her arms crossed. Her gaze was indifferent as she watched the chaotic battle in front of her. She had no intention of getting involved at all. Her eyes flickered, and she looked at Ju Wu. Aren't you going to fight? Ju Wu hesitated for a long time. In the end, he sighed and shook his head. Martial uncle just told me to come and take a look at the situation. He didn't say I wanted to snatch the treasure. Since the treasure has already recognized me as its master, I still want to fight. Isn't my killing intent too heavy? It's a hindrance to my cultivation. Demon Monarch Night Frost raised the corner of her mouth, revealing a rare smile. I thought you were old friends with them, so you didn't want to fight. Ju Wu scratched his bald head in embarrassment. That's indeed the reason. Fellow Taoist Emma once gave me a way out. I don't want to, Demon Monarch Night Frost sighed. If you don't want to fight, you'd better go back early. Needless to say, Yuan and old Donkey Ma won't let this matter rest. Ju Wu was stunned. Senior, didn't they run away? They're just waiting to reap the benefits, Demon Monarch Night Frost said faintly. When both sides are injured, they'll show up. Ju Wu was startled. She looked at Demon Monarch Night Frost cautiously. What about Senior? Demon Monarch Night Frost shook his head. I never lie. If I'm not interested, I'm not interested. As he spoke, he leaned against the stone wall, closed his eyes, and stopped moving as if he was resting. Ju Wu hesitated for a while, but in the end he sighed. Forget it. I'd better go back and report to Martial Uncle. As he spoke, he walked away. Aside from Ju Wu, the others didn't have this kind of awareness. All the cultivators who entered the sacrificial temple rushed here in waves, throwing themselves into the front line to fight for the treasure. Unfortunately, the passage was too narrow and couldn't accommodate more than 20 nascent soul cultivators fighting. As a result, Imo Tiange's group took advantage of the terrain and guarded the entrance. No matter how many people there were, only 2 or 3 of them could fight. Imo Tiange's group didn't have many people, but they were strong. Qin Shi, Jing Xingji and Yang Qingji stood on the front line, their defense unbreakable. At first, these people were full of enthusiasm, but as time passed and they couldn't win, they gradually had other ideas. There were more than 20 of them, but there were only 2 or 3 people facing them. If they rushed to the front, wouldn't they be working for others? If they were injured, they'd be lucky if others didn't take the opportunity to rob them, not to mention that they couldn't win. These people were strong. Just now, Taoist Rui was almost killed by their joint attack, and he was a middle-stage cultivator who had been famous for many years. Gradually the attack slowed down. No one wanted to be the vanguard and let others take advantage of them. In the end, they even shifted the blame to each other and stopped attacking. Brother Taoist Rui. Nan Guotian sent a voice transmission to Taoist Rui, signaling him with his eyes. Taoist Rui understood. He moved far away from the crowd and hid behind them. He was injured by Qin Shi and Imo Tianga's joint attack just now. Now that everyone was slacking off, his behavior was normal, so no one paid much attention to him. Brother Nan, we can't go on like this. What do you think we should do? Nan Guotian rubbed his fat belly, then glanced outside and said, when that old monk Su Xiang attacked earlier, I thought we might be able to take advantage of the situation. I didn't think that these juniors would grow so quickly in just a few decades. Not only did we fail, but they even injured you, Taoist Rui. He cupped his fist at Taoist Rui apologetically. Taoist Rui waved his hand. We've been friends for several hundred years. Why do we have to do this? The problem now is whether we can snatch it or not. The 2 of them stared at the scene in front of them in silence. If all of them attacked together, these juniors wouldn't be able to stop them no matter how fast they grew. After all, there were more than 20 nascent soul cultivators here. Many of them were in the middle stage, and there was also Venerable Xuxiang, a late-stage nascent soul cultivator. On the other hand, Imo Tianga's group only had 3 in the middle stage, 3 in the early stage, an 8th-ranked demonic beast, and an early-stage puppet. But how could they possibly join hands without any ill feelings? Everyone wanted to fish in troubled waters, so no one was willing to risk their lives, including the 2 of them. In my opinion, we'd better retreat for the time being, Nan Guotian said all of a sudden. Brother Nan. Taoist Rui was a bit surprised. Nan Guotian's oily face had a shrewd glint in his small eyes. He looked at the end of the passage and said, I don't know where old Donkey Ma ran off to. Taoist Rui was stunned for a moment, but he soon nodded. I'll listen to Brother Nan. Old Donkey Ma was the most cunning among nascent soul cultivators. There was obviously still hope, so how could he really leave? Rather than letting him reap the benefits, it was better to leave for the time being and see what he was up to. Chapter 644. Imo Tianga dusted her clothes then sat down. They were in a deadlock at the entrance. These people were not stupid. They fought for a while at the beginning, but after realizing that they were powerful, they stopped taking risks. She also knew that this was only a temporary measure. It could not continue like this forever. Firstly, they wouldn't be able to escape if they dragged this on. Secondly, if they dragged this on for too long, if they came up with a plan, they would have to take action. Even if they didn't come up with a plan, what if reinforcements arrived? This place wasn't the celestial pole. Not only were there many late nascent soul cultivators here, but they also had nothing to do with it. Nie Wushang sat down next to her and said, Did you notice that a group of people who should be here didn't come? Imo Tianga took some time to think. Are you talking about people from Juyin sect? Yes. Nie Wushang's gaze swept over the nascent soul cultivators on the stone path. Ling Yunhe claimed that the black tortoise's relic recognized him as its master. Juyin sect also clearly sent people here. So why didn't they come to help? Imo Tianga also looked at these nascent soul cultivators. Sure enough, there weren't any people from Juyin sect among them. What do you think? She asked. Nie Wushang shook her head. I don't understand what Juyin sect thinks of Ling Yunhe. Isn't he the master of the relic left behind by the Guasian sect? Logically speaking, he should be the successor that the sect has nurtured with all its resources. But Juyin sect seems to be very afraid of him, Imo Tianga said. Comparing herself to Juyin sect's attitude towards Ling Yunhe, she knew what was wrong. Ever since Ling Yunhe went alone to look for her to save Nie Wushang, he didn't seem to have the slightest intention of reporting it to the sect. Then came Carefree Valley, where he met Senior Marshal Brother Yuan, and lamented that Juyin sect no longer trusted him. But now, he was trapped here, and the Juyin sect actually did not come to help him. Nie Wushang went through the matter in her heart and asked, could it be that Moon Shadow Devil Lord and old Donkey Ma trapped the people from Juyin sect temporarily? Mo Tiange was stunned for a moment, but soon after, she nodded and said, that's possible. How could other people not know what they knew? Indeed, the others knew that these nascent soul cultivators were currently anxious. They had originally thought that the people from the Juyin sect were behind them, so they wanted to snatch it before they arrived. However, they had wasted an entire day here. Almost everyone else had arrived, but the people from the Juyin sect had yet to arrive. This was strange. On one side was the treasure that they had yet to get their hands on, and on the other side was the Juyin sect that had arrived at some point in time. Apart from Nan Guotian and Taoist Ru Yi, who had withdrawn early, Master Void Phase who had run away impatiently, and Demon Lord Night Frost, who had no intention of getting his hands on the treasure, everyone else was on tenterhooks. They were even more reluctant to approach and get beaten up. Was he really going to let the Juyin sect take advantage of him? That was what everyone was thinking. They were extremely unwilling, but they couldn't think of any good ideas. Han Shizhi's eyes flickered and he suddenly said, everyone, if we continue to delay like this, we might as well go back as soon as possible. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone turned to look at him. Han Shizhi's expression was indifferent. The Juyin sect is not far from here. As soon as he finished speaking, someone sneered. You know? Do you think we don't? Han Shizhi wasn't angry. His lips curled into a mocking smile. So what if you know? Are you going to sit here and wait? The mockery in his tone was too obvious, and he had always offended many people. As soon as he finished speaking, someone sneered. What's wrong, Teacher Han? Are you plotting against someone else again? Han Shizhi wasn't angry at all. There are so many people here. My cultivation level isn't worth mentioning, and the situation is clear. You can only blame yourselves for being stupid, if I can still plot against you. His words were very harsh, and many people were instantly enraged. Han Shizhi pretended not to see it and said, the Juyin sect can ask for reinforcements, but can't you do the same? This has always been the case when major sects fight for resources. As soon as he said this, most people calmed down and fell into deep thought. That was right. Sects had an unwritten rule when it came to fighting for treasures. Even if they became enemies, they wouldn't easily start a dispute. After all, each sect had the most low-level disciples. If they really fell out with each other, what would happen if a few high-level cultivators from the other sect killed all the low-level disciples? Moreover, although the Juyin sect had the advantage in the number of nascent soul cultivators, the other sects also had a lot of nascent soul cultivators. It was just that they were unlucky and didn't have many nascent soul cultivators. For example, the Dawning Pill sect had been doing well for the past few years. They currently had 6 nascent soul cultivators, and the Jingshu sect had more, reaching 8. They also had a nascent soul cultivator. If 2 or 3 sects like this joined forces, they wouldn't lose to the Juyin sect at all. The Juyin sect was currently in a period of crisis. The Iron Mask Immortal was about to pass away, and the Yuanmu Immortal was injured. It was no different from the other sects that only had 1 nascent soul cultivator. It was the best opportunity. Since fellow Taoist Han said so, has the sect been notified? Someone asked slowly after thinking it through. Han Shizhi smiled. A few hours ago, I already sent the message. Among the cultivators, a few glanced at each other and whispered to each other to discuss. A few thought for a moment and used various methods to send the message, and some did nothing. Is it really worth it? Someone hesitated. To mobilize such a large force. For the sake of the vermilion bird. The Juyin sect has been planning for more than 100,000 years. Whether it's worth it or not, it's up to you all to decide. Han Shizhi withdrew from the crowd, closed his eyes, and sat down cross-legged. Mo Tiange and the others all heard this conversation. Han Shizhi's scheme was open and aboveboard. Even if they heard it, it wouldn't be a big deal. Mo Tiange pondered for a moment, then walked towards Ling Yunhe. Fellow Taoist Ling, tell me the truth, Mo Tiange said after casting the soundproof barrier. What's Juyin sect's attitude? What's their attitude towards you and us? Ling Yunhe sat cross-legged in silence. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long time he said, I told you the Juyin sect doesn't trust me anymore. That's all. Mo Tiange asked. Ling Yunhe looked at her, smiled bitterly and sighed. Fine. The truth is, Martial Uncle Yuanmu is very dissatisfied with my behavior. He thinks I'm soft-hearted, so he gave me the cold shoulder after we returned from the Sea of Returning Ruins. Why? Does it need to be said? Ling Yunhe looked at her with a complicated gaze. I didn't get the vermilion bird bow, so Martial Uncle Yuanmu vented his anger on me. I'm close to you, and now he knows I'm with you. But he didn't tell me about the black tortoise. Mo Tiange was silent. In that case, it also had something to do with them. What? What about your elder? Didn't he put in a good word for you? Ling Yunhe sighed again. You don't know. But when we left the Immortal Palace, my great-grandfather was plotted against and most of his cultivation was destroyed. Now he's recuperating in Sky Snow City, but his injuries are too serious, so it's basically impossible for him to recover. Mo Tiange was surprised. Didn't that mean the Ling family's status had dropped a lot? Ling Yunhe knew what she was thinking when he saw her expression, so he continued to say, because of this, when I returned from the Sea of Returning Ruins, I immediately entered closed-door meditation to form my nascent soul. The position of the sect head is important, but nascent soul cultivators are the foundation of the Ling family. Mo Tiange was silent for a long time before she sighed. I'm really sorry. She understood the situation Ling Yunhe was talking about very well. He offended the head, and the nascent soul cultivators of the clan couldn't recover their cultivation, so he was forced to form his nascent soul to replace Ling Shiyu's position. But even so, the Ling family could be considered to have lost its power, right? Master Taoist Yuanmu wouldn't be able to let go of his grudge unless Ling Yunhe advanced to the late stage one day. And this wasn't unrelated to them. Ling Yunhe shook his head softly. Even without you guys, it'd still be the same. Master Taoist Yuanmu was dissatisfied with his attitude. Even without them, these things would have happened sooner or later. But don't you have the soul restraining bead? Mo Tiange said with a frown. For no other reason but because you're the successor of the patriarch's holy relic, I should be a bit more lenient with you. Ling Yunhe smiled. The most important thing is having the soul restraining bead. If I didn't have it, what would I be? There are more than 10 nascent soul cultivators in Juyin sect. I've just advanced, so I'm ordinary and unworthy of their attention. Once the soul restraining bead recognizes me as its master, I'll become the unique one who can't be boasted about or hit. Mo Tiange understood what he meant. Under normal circumstances, the soul restraining bead could increase his weight. But when other people's dissatisfaction with him accumulated to a certain extent, the soul restraining bead would become an eyesore. She couldn't touch him and didn't like him, so she could only treat him coldly. Ling Yunhe said quietly, after I returned to the Sea of Ruins, Martial Uncle Yuanmu thought I wasn't good enough, and planned to choose another successor. Unfortunately, the soul restraining bead can't recognize a new master. In this case, my position is very awkward. After a moment of silence, Mo Tiange asked softly, will they just watch you trapped here and not lend a helping hand? They won't, Ling Yunhe said confidently. No matter what, I'm still a disciple of Juyin sect. Martial Uncle Yuanmu just doesn't like me. But he won't put me to death. Then they'll come. Ling Yunhe stared at the door. They just want to teach me a lesson, and make me understand that Juyin sect is my support, and you guys are just outsiders. In all fairness, Mo Tiange didn't think what Master Taoist Yuanmu did was wrong. Since he thought Ling Yunhe wasn't reliable enough to shoulder Juyin sect, he should erase his unique influence in Juyin sect, and let him be an ordinary nascent soul cultivator. But she thought Master Taoist Yuanmu was too hasty in judging Ling Yunhe to be unable to shoulder such a big responsibility. Did he think he was soft-hearted just because he saw her as a friend? She remembered that Ling Yunhe didn't show any mercy to Ling Yunfei and Tian Jiqian who betrayed him. If one day, her existence affected his and the sect's interests, she believed he would do the same. On the contrary, Master Taoist Yuanmu was taking things for granted. Nowadays, the human world was becoming more and more chaotic. Instead of offending her and Xianqing school behind her, it was better to let go of that matter and make fewer enemies. After all, the vermilion bird bough was originally ownerless. Qinshi being able to obtain it was his fated chance, not something he forcibly seized from Juyin sect. Presumably, Master Taoist Yuanmu didn't have a clear understanding of the current situation due to the prosperity of Juyin sect in the past 10,000 years. Before they arrived at Juyin sect, there was already a commotion outside. Mo Tiange secretly felt a headache coming on. Sure enough, these nascent soul cultivators couldn't wait any longer. They wanted to seize the opportunity before Juyin sect arrived to snatch the bough. With that thought in mind, she stood up. This was going to be a tough battle. Although Juyin sect wouldn't let them off easily, they had to hold on until Juyin sect arrived. Only then would they have a chance to escape. Chapter 645. In the dark belly of the mountain, there was a long and wide canyon. It looked like a mark left by an immortal. The walls on both sides were vertical and steep, and black gas filled the air. Beside the canyon stood a tall man in black. He looked at the churning black gas in the canyon, the wandering ghost cultivators, and the refined corpses beside him. He was silent. After some time, a figure in a green scholarly robe flew over and stood behind him. Senior Moonshadow. This person cupped his hands. Although he called him senior, there was no respect in his tone. The man in black, who was Demon Lord Moonshadow, turned around and looked at the middle-aged scholar in front of him. Without the cloak, his face was still blurry. It seemed to be because of his cultivation method. Fellow Taoist Han, Demon Lord Moonshadow said slowly. This middle-aged scholar was Han Shizhi. Han Shizhi still looked calm. After he formed his nascent soul, he was no longer like before. He looked elegant on the outside but ruthless on the inside. It looked like he was the same on the outside, but it was even more confusing. There is already a chaotic battle over there. I think they can hold on for a while. When will Juyin sect arrive? Hearing this, Demon Lord Moonshadow laughed sinisterly. Juyin sect always does things in a watertight manner. When the time comes, they will naturally appear. Han Shizhi squinted. What about old Donkey Ma? Senior, do you want to share some of the loot with him? The eyes of the Moonshadow Demon Lord flickered. Why? Can't bear to? Han Shizhi snorted and said disdainfully. This old fellow does something that makes people willing to part with him. When he works, he doesn't see anyone. It's easy to take advantage of others. Ha! Demon Lord Moonshadow laughed. Even so, without him, how can we confuse those people? Han Shizhi said coldly, this old thing. Sooner or later, I will make him suffer. That is a matter for the future, Demon Lord Moonshadow said. We will talk about it in the future. The two of them were silent for a while. Demon Lord Moonshadow asked, Mister, you should be here by now, right? Han Shizhi nodded. Teacher has already set off, but it is not convenient to use the public transportation array. He needs some time. Old Yuan Mu has already left Juyin sect. We cannot delay. Han Shizhi was more confident about this. Even if we can't find Yuan Zhen, we can at least delay him for a while. That's enough. The Moonshadow Demon Lord nodded. I hope it goes smoothly. With a wave of the heaven and earth fan, an azure dragon soared into the sky, bringing with it boundless golden light that spread out resplendently. Mo Tiange pulled Nia Wushang. The two of them retreated slightly, and the cloud-soaring crane took their place. Wushang, are you okay? She asked. Nia Wushang's complexion was pale. She took out a black jade talisman from her bosom and lightly pinched it. That black aura was quickly absorbed by her, and her complexion quickly became better. I'm fine. I'll be fine after resting for a while. When she was escaping from the Moonshadow Demon Lord's pursuit, she had expended too much energy and sustained many minor injuries. Although she had rested for more than half a month, She still felt tired easily. She looked at the entrance worriedly. These people seemed to have reached a consensus. Could they resist? Emotienga also had the same thought. The two of them glanced at each other, then tacitly retreated to the side and sat down to meditate. The six of them and the beast took turns to guard the door, determined not to let anyone in. The cultivators who were blocked outside watched them, so they simply imitated them and discussed taking turns. In this way, the pressure on them increased sharply. After all, there were more than 20 nascent soul cultivators. They could exhaust them to death. Hold on, Ling Yunha said with a firm gaze. Julian's sect won't leave me in the lurch. If we hold on, we'll live. Seeing him like this, Emotienga couldn't help but secretly sigh. She also hoped what Ling Yunha said was right, and that Julian's sect wouldn't give up on him. However, what if Julian's sect really gave up on him? After thinking for a while, Emotienga shook her head. They wouldn't. Even if it wasn't for Ling Yunha, they had to come for the soul-restricting bead and black tortoise. They didn't expect they would guard for 3 days. At first, they used their strength to suppress others, but later, they completely relied on medicinal pills to hold on. Seeing that the medicinal pills were gradually running out, Emotienga started to worry. Except for Nia Wushang and Yang Qingji, everyone else needed medicinal pills to replenish their spiritual aura. Although every one of them was quite wealthy, nascent soul cultivators would consume a lot of energy in fights of magical powers. Moreover, once they started fighting, it would be easier for them to win or lose compared to low-level cultivators. In addition, high-grade medicinal pills were incomparably precious. No matter how abundant they couldn't be eaten like jelly beans like aura-refining cultivators. She hesitated for a long time, but when she looked outside, she made up her mind. Senior Marshal Brother, she said in a low voice, we don't have enough medicinal pills. Should I take some? She signaled Jing Xingji to take his place and stepped back. From Emotienga's eyes, he saw her meaning. He frowned slightly. You want to N? She paused for a moment, then explained. Julian's sect probably won't give up on Ling Yunha, but for them, having none is better than having them. Who knows if Julian's sect will wait until we can't hold on any longer to save Ling Yunha. She pondered silently for a while, then said, what you said makes sense. Then I'll go get some? She quickly glanced at the people present and nodded. I'll protect you. Emotienga understood what he meant and said, in the Middle Ages, there were many strange storage magic weapons. She flashed a smile at her. The 3-yang real fire sword was unleashed. Countless dazzling sword lights surrounded her tightly. Under the cover of the sword lights, it was very difficult for others to detect slight spiritual aura fluctuations. Emotienga entered the virtual sky world, went to the storeroom, and put all the medicinal pills she could use into her interspatial ring. After thinking for a moment, she released Xiaofan and Feifei and told them to stay put. When she came out of the virtual sky world, she put away the 3-yang real fire sword and distributed the medicinal pills to the others. Ling Yunha was surprised to see the medicinal pills she gave him. Fellow Taoist Emo, these, Emotienga said calmly. I prepared a lot of them in my storage magic weapon, but it's a bit troublesome to go in and out. Their behavior just now could be hidden from the cultivators outside, but it couldn't be hidden from Ling Yunha and the others. After listening to her explanation, Ling Yunha didn't doubt it at all. He just thought her magic weapon was unique, so he nodded and took it. Thank you. Jing Xingji didn't ask anything. He was already used to this couple being mysterious and doing strange things from time to time. However, when he saw the high-grade medicinal pills Emotienga gave him, he couldn't restrain his jealousy. You two have too many good things. Back in the Immortal Palace in the returning ruined sea, he was overjoyed when he took a bottle of 9 Revolutions Yang restoration pills from Emotienga. But now she gave him 2 bottles. Jing Xingji regretted it. If he knew this would happen, he would have blackmailed her more. Don't talk so much nonsense. Fight seriously, Emotienga said. Jing Xingji swallowed a handful of medicinal pills. He didn't say any nonsense and continued to block them. This was a matter of life and death. With these medicinal pills, everyone was confident. The people outside had a longer rotation than them, so they had enough time to completely recover their spiritual aura. However, they had one shortcoming: they weren't united. Everyone had their own plans and wanted to contribute less, so they wouldn't fight with their lives on the line. Looking at these people, Jing Xingji signaled Qin Shi with his eyes. His gaze seemed to be focused on one of the cultivators. This cultivator was in the peak of the early stage and looked middle-aged. His natal magic weapon was a pair of several inches long, shining with golden light. The two nails transformed into golden light when attacking and a golden screen when defending. They switched between smoothly and weren't weak at all. However, having a balance between offense and defense also meant that neither side was outstanding. Qin Shi nodded slightly, indicating that he understood what he meant. As the sword lights crossed each other, Jing Xingji suddenly burst out. Countless sword lights flew towards that early-stage cultivator. That early-stage cultivator turned pale with fright. His magic weapon was about to transform into a golden screen. But in the next moment, an extremely sharp red sword light suddenly appeared, interrupting his movement. That cultivator was actually calm. He searched his Qingquan bag, and a white light shone, firmly protecting his body. Qin Shi pointed his finger, and a flame suddenly sprang up from that sword light. A vast, sacred, and fiery intent of destruction spread out without any obstruction. This might forcefully suppress that early-stage cultivator. At the same time, a golden light suddenly appeared in the incomparably resplendent sword lights. It gave off a similarly vast aura, and the ruthlessness and killing intent contained within it made people tremble. This golden light merged with the sword light. Everyone seemed to hear the roar of a white tiger, and their minds were shaken. That early-stage cultivator faced this sharp killing intent head-on. He only had time to send his nascent soul out of his body before he felt a chill on his body, and his body was smashed to pieces. The red sword light that had already flown out appeared again. With a clear cry, gorgeous flaming tail feathers curled up. In the flames with a sacred aura, the nascent soul was instantly burnt black and turned into smoke. Even his body disappeared without a trace. Not even his Qingquan bag was left behind. Everyone was aghast. They didn't expect that these two people would suddenly attack and kill a cultivator with lightning speed. Even his nascent soul didn't have a chance to escape. What powerful skills! What ruthless methods! What kind of spell did they use just now? That kind of power was far higher than the cultivation technique they cultivated. Some people thought that fellow Taoist Qin was the person who snatched Juyan Sek's vermilion bird bow. A firebird appeared just now. Could it be the vermilion bird's inheritance? What about the other person? He was obviously an unknown sword cultivator, but his strength wasn't inferior to fellow Taoist Qin's. Could it be that he also obtained the divine beast's inheritance? What about Ling Yunhe? If he absorbed the black tortoise's relic, plus the soul-restricting bead, wouldn't Yuanqu defeat Yuanzhong? He might even be able to compete with Queen Yuanzhong. For a moment, everyone was both shocked and greedy. At this time, Yang Qingji, who had been covering them from the side, rolled up his ghost face banner. The ghost face banner flew out and fiercely bit another cultivator. That cultivator seemed to wake up from a dream. He took out a top-grade nascent soul talisman and retreated quickly, letting others take his place. When he retreated, he saw that the place where the ghost face accidentally bit him was already black and purple, and a walnut-sized lump floated on it. That person couldn't help but turn pale with fright. He thought to himself that if he hadn't made a prompt decision to give up the top-grade talisman, he might have ended up like that person and lost his life. Right? Everyone else saw this unforeseen event and couldn't help but retreat a few steps. Those two people were very strong. This Yang Qingji wasn't easy to deal with either. There were also Ling Yunhe and Imo Tiange behind them. One was nurtured by Juyan sect, while the other was only in the core formation realm, but dared to challenge a group of nascent soul cultivators. Even that unremarkable black-robed woman wasn't someone to be trifled with. For a moment, everyone hesitated. With such a group of powerful people, was it necessary for them to throw their lives away for others? Chapter 646. Where's Yuanjin? Outside the Carefree Valley, Reverend Yuanmu asked. A core formation cultivator guarding the big tree at the entrance of the Carefree Valley reported. Head seat Marshal Uncle Yuanjin said he's keeping watch inside. If head seat Marshal Uncle arrives, just send him a message. Reverend Yuanmu's brows furrowed deeply. This person said he wanted to contact Yuanjin. But in fact, he'd already sent a summoning talisman to Yuanjin the moment he arrived. But Yuanjin didn't receive it. The current situation was really strange. Senior Marshal Brother Yuanmu, another middle-stage cultivator with a big beard, came forward and asked. Junior Marshal Brother Yuanjin couldn't have been involved, right? He can't be. Reverend Yuanmu's brows sank. It's just letting him keep watch. It's not like it's something difficult to do. Could it be that he can't even do this? Hearing the displeasure in Reverend Yuanmu's tone, the big bearded cultivator didn't say anything else. He just asked, then what do we do next? Go in directly? Reverend Yuanmu was also conflicted over this problem. After thinking for a while, he slowly said, Yuanjin has always been reliable in his work. It's impossible for him to disappear for no reason. The big bearded cultivator understood the meaning behind his words. Senior Marshal Brother suspects that someone has trapped Junior Marshal Brother Yuanjin? Reverend Yuanmu nodded. Yuanjin must have encountered a problem that's hard to solve. There were 3 of them, but they actually disappeared without a trace. Someone must have been targeting them. Perhaps it's targeting us. It can't be, right? The big bearded cultivator said. Who would be so daring? Seizing treasures is one thing. But if they deliberately killed our sect's cultivators, aren't they afraid of angering Juyin sect? Reverend Yuanmu obviously wasn't so optimistic. He said, Senior Marshal Brother Ironface has passed away. But in these few decades, I've also been injured. Who knows, there might be someone who thinks the chance to turn things around has come. The big bearded cultivator knew what Reverend Yuanmu said made sense, so he asked, since Senior Marshal Brother Yuanjin thinks something has happened to him, should we go find him first, or save Junior Marshal Brother Ling first? Spiritual Master Yuanmu's brows furrowed, clearly very troubled. Let's save Yuanjin first. That kid has always had good fortune. He shouldn't die for the time being. The brat he was referring to was Ling Yunha. Big Beard thought for a while and said, Senior Marshal Brother Yuanmu, Yuanjin has 3 people, and he doesn't have anything that people covet. Even if he's trapped for a while, his life shouldn't be in danger. On the other hand, Junior Marshal Brother Ling. These days, all the nascent soul cultivators of the major sects have come out and are rushing over here. I'm afraid that Junior Marshal Brother Ling won't be able to hold on for long. We can't afford to lose the spirit restraining pearl. Now that he claims to have inherited the Black Tortoise's legacy, shouldn't we go over earlier? Reverend Yuanmu snorted coldly and said, Why did you save him earlier? He was becoming more and more outrageous. He clearly knew that those people had great enmity with the sect, but he still chose to associate with them. It was one thing for him to associate with them, but when there was news of the Black Tortoise, he didn't inform the sect and instead chose to travel with them. Does he even care about the sect? Don't be angry, Senior Marshal Brother, Big Beard hurriedly persuaded. Junior Marshal Brother Ling is young. It's inevitable that he'll feel unhappy after suffering some setbacks. He doesn't have the guts to ignore the sect. The Ling family is relying on him to support it now. Reverend Yuanmu calmed down a little and said, I know this too. Suddenly falling from the sky, he'll definitely feel disappointed. But he's not living up to expectations, so what can we do? The burden of Juyin's sect is too heavy. I don't have the guts to hand it over to someone who does things too casually. Big Beard was a little disapproving. In Junior Marshal Brother's opinion, it's still too early to say this. Historically, the first seat's cultivation has always been at the late nascent soul level. Junior Marshal Brother Ling hasn't formed his nascent soul for long, so it's hard to say whether he has the fated chance to reach the late nascent soul level. If there's really a day when he reaches the late nascent soul level, even if Senior Marshal Brother doesn't like it, we can only hand it over to him. Reverend Yuanmu knew that what he said was true. He sighed and said, Let's look for Yuanjin first. There's something strange about this matter. I keep feeling that there's a conspiracy. If we don't find Yuanjin, we can't calm down. As for that Ling Yunha kid, The spirit restraining pearl can only recognize someone who practices the ice and fire technique as its master. So there's nothing to be afraid of. Seeing that he had made up his mind, Big Beard didn't say anything else. Yes, senior martial brother. He sighed inwardly. This senior martial brother of his had always been suspicious and serious. Once he became suspicious, it was like a thorn in his heart. If he didn't find Yuanjin, he wouldn't be able to get rid of his worries. However, the moment he said this, it was clear that he had made up his mind to give up on Ling Yunhe if they didn't make it in time. After all, Ling Yunhe had lost his identity as the successor. Ling Yunhe alone wasn't as important as Yuanjin and the other two. Thinking of Ling Xiyu, who had always been on good terms with him, Big Beard sighed inwardly. Without Ling Yunhe, the Ling family would really decline. Nanguitian and Taoist Ru Yi were flying. After a while, they stopped at the end of a stone path. They looked surprised. What's going on? Nanguitian looked at the densely packed rocks in front of him and frowned. Taoist Ru Yi went forward to take a look. His face darkened. The road is blocked. The two of them looked at each other and didn't say anything. This was the small path that Yuing Demon Monarch had brought them here. It was said that when Starfall City was searching for demonic mines, they accidentally discovered a strange aura and spent many years digging it out. Without this secret path, it would be difficult for them to enter. They had seen with their own eyes how terrifying the Black Water Formation was. Now that this path was blocked, they used their divine senses and realized that it was completely blocked. Even nascent soul cultivators like them couldn't clear it. How could this be? After thinking for a while, Nanguitian asked, Taoist Ru Yi, in your opinion, who exactly is blocking this path? What's their intention? Taoist Ru Yi thought for a while and said, since they've blocked the path, it means that they don't want us to go out or that they don't want anyone else to come in. It's easy to explain why they don't want anyone else to come in. It's just that more and more people have come, and the competition is getting harder. But if they don't want us to go out? Seeing that Taoist Ru Yi didn't say anything, Nanguitian asked, so what if they don't want us to go out? After a long while Taoist Ru Yi sighed. They must be harboring evil intentions. Nanguitian narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Taoist Ru Yi said, why do we have to go out? Apart from the ownership of the treasures, there's also... Nanguitian pondered for a while and said in shock, run for our lives. Taoist Ru Yi nodded solemnly. The two of them fell silent again. After a long while, Nanguitian said, perhaps they're trying to prevent those people from escaping? Taoist Ru Yi smiled bitterly. Brother Nan, when did you learn to deceive yourself? Nanguitian smiled bitterly as well. That's right. I shouldn't have deceived myself. There are so many of us. How can they escape so easily? There's no need for them to use such a method. It's just that I can't believe that someone would be so generous. He was glad that the people from the Dawning Pill sect and the Five Elements Valley hadn't arrived yet. No matter who it is, we only have two choices. Taoist Ru Yi had already considered the consequences. The first choice is to go back immediately and ask them to temporarily stop fighting and join forces to kill our way out. The second choice is to join the other side. Before Nanguitian could say anything, a clear applause rang out in the quiet belly of the mountain. Clap, clap, pa. Along with the voice, the Moon Shadow Demon King approached them silently. He stood not far away from them and said, my two friends are indeed smart people. I wonder what your choice will be. Hearing the sound, the two of them had already turned around. When they saw the Moon Shadow Demon Monarch approaching them, they could not help but be astonished. Was this old ghost already so terrifying? However, they were all old monsters who had lived for hundreds or even thousands of years. With a flash in their minds, they recovered. Under such circumstances, what else could they not guess? Fellow Taoist Lunar Shadow, Taoist Ru Yi said in a deep voice, so you didn't plan so much for some cultivation technique at all? No, the Moon Shadow Demon Lord said. At first, I did it for that junior's cultivation technique. But I didn't expect that the junior could actually call those few helpers over. My efforts were all for naught. I knew that they would definitely come here, so I suddenly had an idea. This is a really good place. Nanguitian stared at him and asked, even if you only thought about it later, you must have wanted to kill him a long time ago, right? What good would it do you if you killed us? You're a demonic cultivator, and you've only occupied one city. Even if you want to unify the demon territory, you don't have to kill us all. The Moon Shadow Demon Lord smiled gently. Fellow Taoist Nan, you seem to think that unifying the demon territory is very easy? Nanguitian did not speak. The Moon Shadow Demon Lord continued. Putting aside how troublesome that old witch Yi Shuang is, the current situation is that the Tao cultivators have been strong for too long. Even if we unify the demon territory, we can't restore the glory days when the demon supremacy was still alive. So, fellow Taoist Lunar Shadow wants to be the second demon supremacy. Taoist Ru Yi was expressionless as he said slowly, if you kill all of us here, the Taoist, Buddhist, and Confucian sects will not be able to recover from this setback. Even fellow Taoist Yi Shuang, who is the only demonic cultivator who can resist you, will not be able to escape. Then you can unify the demon territory and even dominate Yunzhong. Thinking of this, he frowned slightly. That's not right. This is not something that you can do alone. You must have helpers, right? Of course. The eyes on the Moon Shadow Demon Lord's blurry face flickered. Fellow Taoist Ru Yi, you think too highly of me. I do want to be the second demon supremacy, but I'm not arrogant enough to want to dominate Yunzhong. How could it be easy to kill so many nascent soul cultivators? As long as he could kill those whom he had never dealt with, it would be enough. He only wanted to create a huge demon territory that had never been seen since ancient times. He did not want to become the master of Yunzhong. He knew himself very well. When the demon supremacy was still alive, Fu Yaozi and the other 3 sages had suppressed him, let alone him. Then, Nanguitian sighed, fellow Taoist Lunar Shadow, how do you plan to deal with us? The Moon Shadow Demon Lord stared at them for a long time and said, it's not difficult to kill the 2 of you, but that would be too much of a pity. Just like what you said just now, I'll give you 2 choices. Defeat me and escape or join us. He used the word we, not me. So, have you decided? Nanguitian and Taoist Rui seemed to see a confident smile on that blurry face. The 2 of them looked at each other and said in unison, we'll join you. Good. The Moon Shadow Demon Lord really smiled this time. As he turned around he said, follow me. The next moment he stopped in his tracks. A purple-clothed person came out from a corner. She was also silent. She sighed and said, Yuing, so this is your plan. Chapter 647. Night Frost. Moon Shadow Demon Lord's eyes flickered. Night Frost Demon Lord brushed away the stray hair on her forehead and smiled. It's me. What? You also want to ask me which path to choose? Oh no, you won't ask me, because with me around, you won't be able to become the second Demon Lord. Moon Shadow Demon Lord did not speak and only stared at her. Night Frost Demon Lord did not speak either. She smiled calmly. This made Nanguitian and Taoist Ru Yi even more confused. Night Owl City had always been the most overbearing demon domain. One could imagine Night Frost Demon Lord's strength. She rarely fought personally, but Moon Shadow Demon Lord and Guifang Demon Lord were very polite to her and never got into conflict with Night Owl City. Moon Shadow Demon Lord could not kill Night Frost Demon Lord. That was for sure. But what about Night Frost Demon Lord? Knowing that he had accomplices, she jumped out just like that. Wasn't she a little too confident? Night Frost, do you think you can stop me? I can't, Night Frost Demon Lord said. However, I'll have to give you some trouble, so that I won't be in vain for you to think so highly of me. Moon Shadow Demon Lord's murderous aura suddenly became heavy. After entering Carefree Valley, perfected Yuanmu, and his group followed the route that Yuanjin had given them. They passed through the outer valley, and into the inner valley. Finally they turned into a pit. This pit was narrow and irregular, with obvious traces of digging. Occasionally, they could see things like mining hose scattered on the ground. After winding around the pitch-black pit for a long time, they passed by a place where they seemed to hear the sound of rushing water. There was another place where the strange aura was so strong that even the nascent soul cultivators like them felt their hair stand on end. After an unknown period of time, they suddenly saw a huge karst cave in front of them. Once they walked out, they saw more than 10 nascent soul cultivators standing at the side. When they saw them, everyone was on guard. Perfected Yuanmu glanced at them and realized that they were all nascent soul cultivators from various sections. He did not know why they had all stopped here. He gave Big Beard a look and Big Beard understood. He took a step forward and bowed to them. Fellow Taoists. Seeing that he was treating them politely, the nascent soul cultivators let down their guard and greeted him. Among these cultivators, a chubby middle-stage old man grinned and said, "So it's Brother Zhao. Your Juyin sect is a little slow." Big Beard laughed and said, "I was delayed by some matters. Fellow Taoist Zhao, may I ask why all of you have stopped here?" The chubby old man sighed when he heard this. "It's not that we want to stop, it's because we can't." Big Beardy was taken aback. "You can't walk over?" The chubby old man nodded and pointed. "Look, the road has been blocked by someone. It's impassable." Everyone from the Juyin sect went forward to take a look. Indeed, the passageway marked on Yuanjin's map had disappeared. The bearded man was a little stunned. "What's going on?" The chubby old man said, "I don't know. We arrived just a bit earlier than you, but we found that the road was blocked. Moreover, fellow Taoist Yen from the Five Elements Valley said that the method used to block the road is a special kind of barrier, which contains the Tao of formation, and is very difficult to break." He pointed to a bashful young man next to him. This young man seemed to have just formed his nascent soul, and didn't look very stable. Seeing the chubby old man pointing at him, he hurriedly cupped his hands at Big Beard. The Five Elements Valley specialized in the Tao of formation. If the cultivators from the Five Elements Valley said that it was difficult to break, then it was really difficult. Big Beard asked about the situation and probed for a while before he went to report to Master Yuanmu. "Senior Martial Brother Yuanmu, that fellow Taoist Yin shouldn't be lying. There is indeed a barrier. In my opinion, it's not something that can be broken in a day." This junior martial brother of his wasn't very outstanding in fights of magical powers, but he was quite talented in formations. Master Yuanmu believed in his judgment. He pondered for a while and suddenly thought of a possibility. He said in shock, "Not good. Yuanjun might be trapped here." Hearing his words, all the cultivators from the Juyin sect looked surprised. After a moment of shock, Big Beard immediately thought that there was indeed such a possibility. All the way here, they couldn't contact Yuanjun, and the passage was blocked. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? If Yuanjun happened to be trapped inside, then it could be explained. Master Yuanmu quickly calmed down and thought quickly. Yuanjun is my blood relative after all. If something happened to him, I should be able to sense it. Moreover, once his life lamp is extinguished, the sect will immediately use a 10,000 miles sound-transmitting talisman to inform me. Since there's none of that, Yuanjun and the others shouldn't be in danger. They're just temporarily trapped. Big Beard nodded, agreeing with his judgment. Since Yuanjun and the others aren't in danger, shouldn't we go and save Junior Martial Brother Ling first? Yes. Master Yuanmu nodded. His eyes narrowed again. Let's go and look for them. Yuanjun said that there's another path here, but it's very difficult to walk. We can only choose that path. As they spoke, they suddenly saw two figures slowly flying out of the karst cave. One of them looked to be about 50 years old. He was dressed in silk clothes and embroidered shoes like a rich man from the secular world. He had a gold belt and jade belt. The other was dressed in a sky-blue Taoist robe, looking plain and delicate. Senior Martial Brother Rui. The youth surnamed Yen from the Five Elements Valley called out. When the two people saw them, they slowly flew over. Fellow Taoists. Nan Guotian smiled. So you're already here. Fellow Taoist Nan. The chubby old man surnamed Xiao hurriedly bowed and asked. Fellow Taoist Nan, what's going on? Why is the path blocked? Nan Guotian sighed. That's why I'm here. Old Donkey Ma colluded with old freak Yuing to steal the black tortoise's inheritance. However, he was worried that there were too many of us, so he sealed the path. Fellow Taoist Rui and I saw that the situation was chaotic, so we left early. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to escape. So that's what happened. The chubby old man was both shocked and angry. No wonder old freak Ewing suddenly became so generous. He's up to no good, Taoist Rui said coldly. When did he have good intentions? Fortunately, I was already paying attention. Fellow Taoist Rui, Master Yuanmu suddenly spoke. Since fellow Taoist Rui was already suspicious, why did you still follow us? Upon seeing Master Yuanmu, Taoist Rui softened his tone and said with a bitter smile, fellow Taoist Yuanmu makes it sound so easy. Your Juyan sect is a big family. So how can our 5 Elements Valley be so relaxed? I'm not afraid of being laughed at by fellow Taoists, but it's better to believe it than not. Who knows, maybe this fated chance will fall into our hands. Upon hearing Taoist Rui's words, everyone felt distressed. Which one of them didn't think so? Otherwise, how could more than 20 nascent soul cultivators come as soon as Devil Monarch Ewing released the news? Decades ago, the world changed, and One Leaf Island and North Pole Island were destroyed. Now the cultivation world in Yunzhong was short of manpower. They couldn't cultivate core formation cultivators, and nascent soul cultivators couldn't find spiritual treasures either. Since they had nothing to do, they might as well join in the fun. With so many people, Devil Monarch Ewing couldn't possibly capture them all at once, could he? The chubby old man said doubtfully. Fellow Taoist Rui, Old Freak Ewing and Old Donkey Ma are just 2 people. How can they do that? I remember that fellow Taoist Yi Shuang and monk Su Xiang also came. I don't think they have the guts. Fellow Taoist Xiao, there's something you don't know, Nanguatian said. Yi Shuang and Su Xiang have been lured away. The 2 of them seem to be colluding with someone, and they've been prepared for a long time. Who did they collude with? What did they prepare? Master Taoist Yuanmu went straight to the point. Nanguatian shook his head. The 2 of us aren't their match. When we realized something was wrong, we ran for our lives. The cultivators were silent, but they were frantically sending voice transmissions to each other. Whether it was their teammates or disciples, they were all discussing what Nanguatian and Taoist Rui said. Did Devil Monarch Ewing really collude with Old Donkey Ma? Or did they deliberately lure them away to avoid having too many competitors? They didn't believe Devil Monarch Ewing and Old Donkey Ma. But they also didn't believe Nanguatian and Taoist Rui. The competition for resources in Yunzhong was too fierce. Some of them wanted to save their lives, some wanted to snatch treasures, and some wanted to save people. For a moment, more than 10 people hesitated and debated, unable to make a decision. Senior brother Yuanmu, do you think they're telling the truth? Big Beard sent a voice transmission to Master Taoist Yuanmu. Master Taoist Yuanmu frowned. After a while he said, it's possible. Ah, Master Taoist Yuanmu said. Others might not know what kind of person old Devil Ewing is, but we old fellows do. When he was young, he didn't keep a low profile at all. After he became a nascent soul, for some reason, he actually started to cultivate his character. If you say that he set up this trap, I'll believe you. Then Master Taoist Yuanmu hesitated again. It's just that Nanguatian and Rui have always been inseparable from each other. It's not impossible to say that they're working together to deceive others. Looking at him, Big Beard knew that senior brother Yuanmu had gone crazy again. He had to think carefully about which was the truth before he made a decision. At this moment, 3 people came out of the pit. Everyone looked and saw that they were Teacher Yu and 2 other nascent soul Confucian cultivators from the Yu Mountain Academy. Seeing them, Teacher Yu was shocked. Fellow Taoist Yuanmu, you're Mr. Yu. Master Taoist Yuanmu raised his hand in greeting, his gaze sweeping over the 2 people behind him. Yu Mountain Academy had lost some cultivators in the Sea of Returning Ruins back then. Among these 2 people, one had just formed his nascent soul in recent years. Of course, this wasn't the main point. The main point was that Yu Mountain Academy only had 5 nascent soul cultivators now. Including Han Shizhi, who was sent here first, they actually had 4. Could it be that Han Shizhi had obtained some news? While he was thinking about this, someone had already told Teacher Yu about the situation. After hearing that, Teacher Yu looked at Master Taoist Yuanmu. Fellow Taoist Yuan Mu, what do you think? Master Taoist Yuan Mu shook his head. It's hard to say. Teacher Yu smiled. Mayu Mountain Academy will have to take a gamble. After saying that, he cupped his hands at everyone and left with his 2 juniors. Master Taoist Yuan Mu was stunned and hurriedly called out, Mr. Yu. Teacher Yu stopped. Fellow Taoist Yuan Mu, what can I do for you? Master Taoist Yuan Mu narrowed his eyes and asked, Mr. Yu, you seem very confident? Teacher Yu paused, a mysterious smile appearing on his face. You can say that. After saying that, he turned around. Mayu Mountain Academy isn't as big as Juyin sect. When it's time to fight, we still have to fight. Chapter 648. After being replaced by Xiaofeng, Mo Tiange simply wanted to lie down. It had been many years since they were this crazy. In the past few days, people kept coming. The number of nascent soul cultivators outside had already reached 30, and the intensity of fights of magical power had increased a lot. They were almost numb to it. Fights of magical power, rotation, taking medicinal pills, and regulating their breaths. They didn't dare to relax even for a single step. Facing so many nascent soul cultivators, if it weren't for the fact that they still had a lot of medicinal pills, they might have already collapsed. Damn it, is Juyin sect coming or not? They'll come, Ling Yunhe said. Although he was tired, he was still very determined. Upon hearing his answer, Mo Tiange finally realized that she'd unknowingly asked that question. She patted her forehead in annoyance. Was she really so tired that she couldn't even speak? Have you considered the possibility of Juyin sect giving up on you? With the yang spiritual beat on him, Qin was relatively relaxed. Ling Yunhe paused for a moment, then slightly raised his head. I haven't. You better think about it. Qin tone was indifferent, as if he didn't consider whether Ling Yunhe could bear it or not. He said directly, Juyin sect isn't far from here. Besides, with such convenient transportation, there's no reason they haven't come by now. Ling Yunhe didn't say anything, but his gaze was somewhat confused. Qin didn't realize that his one sentence had broken a person's long-held belief. He was still guarding the door, not moving even an inch. Mo Tiange sat inside the spirit-gathering formation to recover her spiritual aura. She seemed to notice something as she looked at Ling Yunhe. After a long time, Ling Yunhe finally smiled at her. I'm fine. Is he really fine? I'm afraid not. Mo Tiange sighed inwardly. She recalled the trip to returning ruins several decades ago. At that time, he was still the most promising and most valued junior in Juyin sect. Several decades later, he formed his nascent soul in one fell swoop, but his status plummeted. The affairs of the world were impermanent. There were only 4 words, but each word weighed 1,000 caddies. Mo Tiange didn't know whether treating Ling Yunhe coldly was right or wrong for Juyin sect, but she knew that as the person involved, Ling Yunhe must have been very sad. She, on the other hand, cherished everything she had even more. Loneliness didn't mean that there was no one around you. There was no one in your heart. We can't place our hopes in Juyin sect. Qin voice transmission entered her ears. She pondered the meaning of Qin words. You're saying that Juyin sect probably won't come, so we'd better save ourselves? Yes. Qin tone was flat. We can't rely on others. Besides, Juyin sect doesn't have a good impression of us. Even with the Lingyun crane here, we still won't have a good time. They had always known this. If things were a little better, Juyin Zone would ignore them and leave after saving Ling Yunhe. However, if that was the case, they could take advantage of the chaos to kill their way out. If things were a little worse, Juyin Zone would harbor a grudge and want to make a move on them. However, even with enlightened Master Yuan Mu, it was impossible for Juyin Zone to sweep them all away. If they worked together, they were still very confident that they could escape. Either way, they couldn't be unprepared. What do you suggest? Qin repelled the enemy with one sword strike, then sent Ling Yunhe a voice transmission. Fellow Taoist Ling, are you willing to part with your flying magic weapon? Ling Yunhe was confused. He looked at him and asked, What do you mean? Qin said, We have a method that might be able to guarantee our safety, But we need that magic weapon of yours to buy us some time. To put it mildly, he was using his Dharma treasure to exchange for time. Ling Yunhe thought for a moment and said, magic treasures are just external objects after all. No matter how precious they are not as important as life. That's good. Qinshi then sent Mo Tiange another voice transmission. I've already asked Ling Yunhe to use his flying magic weapon to buy us some time. We'll enter the flying ship, and then enter the virtual sky world. Mo Tiange was shocked. Take them into the virtual sky world? I once read in an ancient book that there are many space cracks like the one in Guishu Sea in this world. There are secret techniques that can refine keys to go in and out, such as the 5 sacred objects from back then. Your virtual sky world also uses keys, so you can just tell them that. Mo Tiange said, aren't you just tempting their greed by saying that? Since it was a key, it could be snatched, and there were so many spiritual plants inside. It wasn't that she didn't want to trust her friends, but people's hearts were hard to fathom. Sometimes the catalyst of the environment was very important. Qinshi said patiently, how could I not know this? In the virtual sky world, you're a god. If you don't want them to know, it's very easy for you to do something. In this kind of situation, they're willing to advance and retreat with us. So it's obvious that they're sincere to us. They probably won't question us. In the end, he sighed again. I know this step is very dangerous. This is a test for both us and them. If we don't do well, we might be left with future troubles. However, in a life and death situation, our lives are still the most important. Mo Tiange carefully thought about this matter in her mind, and felt it was very feasible. She was now in the middle stage, and among them, no one had a higher cultivation level than her. Moreover, they were good at formations, so it wasn't difficult to do something like this. They could set up a barrier around the medicinal field, or directly surround the bamboo forest. As for future troubles, it was better than losing their lives. After the incident with Ren Yufeng, she deliberately used the virtual sky world less to avoid relying on it too much. However, this didn't mean she didn't use it. In a life and death situation, she still had to use it. With this thought in mind, she nodded. Okay, I understand. Qinshi nodded. You arrange it, and make sure we have time to retreat to the flying ship. After Mo Tiange agreed, he sent a voice transmission to Ling Yunhe. Fellow Taoist Ling, if it's dangerous, throw the flying ship out and we'll all hide inside. Ling Yunhe naturally agreed. After slightly recovering her spiritual aura, Mo Tiange stood up and took out many formations from her Qianquan ring. Starting from the entrance, she began to prepare carefully. In order to defend against the enemy, she had already arranged several simple formations at the entrance. Now, she carefully included these formations to enhance the defensive ability. Qinshi said loudly, let's work hard and hold on until she finishes arranging the formations. No one objected. However, when they saw Mo Tiange starting to arrange the formations, the attacks outside became even more fierce. After going through untold hardships, they finally left the cave. Master Taoist Yuan Mu wiped his sweat. This section of the road was really dangerous. They had about 20 people. Although they didn't suffer any losses, half of them were eroded by this strange aura. Among them, 3 to 5 were particularly serious. It was estimated that it would be impossible to remove this aura without several decades. This kind of danger made Master Taoist Yuan Mu feel very uneasy. If there was such a way out, there really was a possibility that they would be wiped out in one fell swoop. However, the enemy also had to be very strong. Devil Monarch Yuing alone wasn't enough. With this thought in mind, Master Taoist Yuan Mu calmed down and concentrated on moving forward. Before long, he sensed a strong and sacred aura mixed with the aura of many cultivators. Normally, he didn't feel it, but now, compared to this strong aura, the so-called power of nascent soul cultivators was simply not worth mentioning. Seeing that the ground was paved with stone slabs and the walls were built with huge stones, Master Taoist Yuan Mu finally heaved a sigh of relief. Although he could give up on Ling Yunhe, if he had no other choice, he still had to save him if he could. After all, he was a disciple of Juyan sect, and was also the one recognized by the forbidding divine pearl. Everyone, After entering the sacrificial temple, the 5 people from Jilin sect immediately occupied the passage and turned to face everyone. Master Taoist Yuan Mu said in a heavy tone, "Everyone knows why we're here. Once we start fighting, we'll be enemies. However, fellow Taoists can also choose to be friends with us. I hereby promise that if you're willing to help, I'll definitely reward you. Even if you don't want to fight, as long as you don't become enemies with us, I'll also reward you." Master Taoist Yuan Mu's approach was called using peaceful means before resorting to force. No matter how powerful Jilin sect was, they only had a dozen or so nascent soul cultivators. Some were in closed-door meditation, some were traveling, and some were guarding the mountain gate. At present, those who could go out, except for Yuan Zhen, and the other 2 who were trapped, were the 5 of them. However, there were more than a dozen nascent soul cultivators traveling with them, plus those who were already here. Even if Master Taoist Yuan Mu was the current #1 cultivator in Yunzhong, he couldn't defeat all these people, especially Yu Shusheng, a late-stage nascent soul cultivator. For those with average strength who didn't have enough allies, helping Jilin sect was also a very good choice. As the #1 sect in Yunzhong, and the #1 cultivator in Yunzhong, since Master Taoist Yuan Mu said that he would reward them, it was something that was enough to move nascent soul cultivators. This was much more practical than blindly snatching the black tortoise's fated chance. Immediately some people were moved. Some cultivators from small sects weighed the pros and cons, and didn't intend to intervene. As for the remaining cultivators from large sects, needless to say, they wouldn't agree. Their fellow disciples were already fighting in front of them. Mr. Yu. In the end, Master Taoist Yuan Mu's gaze fell on Yu Shusheng. Yu Shusheng gently waved his folding fan and said with a faint smile, "Fellow Taoist Yuan Mu, do you still need to ask?" Master Taoist Yuan Mu sighed. "Mr. Yu, I really don't want to fight with you." Yu Shusheng smiled and said, "It's not the first time we fought over something. Fellow Taoist Yuan Mu, why are you so sad?" Master Taoist Yuan Mu smiled, and the exquisite pagoda appeared in his hand. Emo Tienga was the first to notice the movement at the entrance of the temple. The spiritual aura fluctuation was so violent, so the person who made the move was most likely a late-stage nascent soul cultivator. Just as she thought that, Ling Yunhe suddenly showed a pleasantly surprised expression. "Martial Uncle Yuan Mu, Martial Uncle Yuan Mu is here." The others turned to look at him. Emo Tienga asked, "Fellow Taoist Ling, are you sure?" Ling Yunhe nodded without hesitation. "I can't be wrong. This is the aura of the exquisite pagoda." He used to be Master Taoist Yuan Mu's favorite junior, and often took him with him. He was very familiar with the exquisite pagoda, so it was impossible for him to be mistaken. Everyone was overjoyed. The people from Jilin sect were here, so they had a chance to escape. Qinshi glanced at Ling Yunhe and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Ling, your magic weapon is safe." Ling Yunhe also smiled. "Fortunately, Martial Uncle Yuan Mu came in time. Otherwise I would have been broke. This flying ship cost me all my savings." Emo Tienga also smiled and secretly transmitted her voice to Qin Shi. "You really came in time. We don't need to test them anymore." Qin Shi nodded slightly. It was best not to reveal his secret in front of people if he could, unless he had no other choice. He also didn't want them to know about the existence of the virtual sky world. After all, it was always risky. Sharp whistling sounds could be heard. The fight outside the temple was getting more and more intense, causing the cultivators guarding the door to rush to help their fellow disciples. Qin Shi swept his gaze over them and said, "Let's also rush out." Chapter 649. The temple was in a mess. These nascent soul cultivators had never seen such a chaotic situation in their lives. More than half of the nascent soul cultivators in Yunzhong were here. Emo Tienga was even more shocked. In the Celestial Pole, there were 70 to 80% of them. Even Kuanzhong City didn't have so many nascent soul cultivators at the same time. The space was narrow, but there were many cultivators. Spells, magic weapons, talismans and secret techniques were flying everywhere. It was as chaotic as a fight between mortals. Emotinga believed that if this place wasn't the five spirits' sacrificial temple, but an ordinary building, it would have been shaken and the mountains would have collapsed. As soon as they came out, they were attacked from all sides. Fortunately, the situation was too chaotic. Even if they attacked from all sides, they couldn't do it. Take this chance to run. Qin Shi said. Everyone nodded to show they understood. Ling Yunhe would be taken away by Juyan's sect, but they wouldn't. Taking advantage of the chaos, they should run as soon as possible. They shouldn't wait for Juyan's sect to save them. Asterisk 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 6 people stood beside the cracked canyon. They were Demon Master Moon Shadow, Old Donkey Ma, Nan Guotian, Taoist Rui, Han Shiji, and the new nascent soul cultivator surnamed Yen from Five Elements Valley. All of them were silent, as if they were waiting for something. Not long after, a few figures flew over and quickly flew in front of them. Teacher. Han Shiji bowed to greet him with a happy expression. Scholar Yu smiled gently and raised the folding fan in his hand. Shiji, you've worked hard. I don't dare. This is what a student should do. Han Shiji was arrogant, but he was respectful and humble in front of his teacher. Scholar Yu nodded with a smile and turned to look at Demon Master Moon Shadow. Fellow Taoist Moon Shadow, are you ready? Demon Master Moon Shadow was indifferent. Of course. What about you? Scholar Yu said. Yuan Mu and the others have entered. We can start now. He then sighed. Unfortunately, Old Gua and Miaoying didn't take the bait. Otherwise, it's enough to kill Yuan Mu, Demon Master Moon Shadow said coldly. The Moon Shadow Demon Lord said coldly. Once Yuan Mu dies, Tai Mian will pass away. Without a late nascent cultivator to hold the fort, the conflict in the Juyan sect will intensify. If they use some tricks, it is not impossible for them to fall apart. At that time, the number 1 sect in Yunzhong will disappear, and the power of the Dao sects will be greatly reduced. That will be the time for the demonic and Confucian sects to rise. What about Yi Shuang? Scholar Yu asked. Are you sure she won't be a stumbling block for you? Humph. At the mention of Demon Lord Night Frost, Demon Lord Moon Shadow's expression turned ugly. If that old monk Su Xiang had not interfered, how could Night Frost have escaped so easily? Scholar Yu narrowed his eyes. Does this mean that Yi Shuang already knows? The Moon Shadow Demon Master nodded reluctantly. However, they can't escape either. Heh. Old Donkey Ma grinned from the side. Taoist Yuing, why think so much? Even if they ran out, what could they do? Don't tell me you're afraid of them? The Moon Shadow Demon Master looked at him coldly. Old Donkey Ma, you don't have to fan the flames. That old monk Su Xiang has always disliked you. If he wants to seek revenge, you won't be able to escape. Old Donkey Ma blinked his small eyes and said, Taoist, you've really misunderstood me. This old man's lifespan is running out. Why would I want to get involved in these things? I just want to live a peaceful and stable life. That's enough. The Moon Shadow Demon Master snorted again. She did not believe him at all. Old Donkey Ma's lifespan was indeed running out. He was a cultivator of the same generation as the Guifang Demon Lord. Among the late nascent cultivators in Yunzhong, he was the oldest. However, this old man relied on his itinerant cultivator status to enter the ranks of the late nascent realm. His fated chances were top-notch. It was said that he had consumed a life-prolonging spirit fruit in the past. 400 to 500 years. Compared to the lifespan of a late nascent realm cultivator, it was not a lot, but it was not considered little either. Moreover, this old man had always been mysterious. Who knew if he, who looked like he had one foot in the grave, could hold on until they were all dead? Fellow Taoist Moon Shadow, can we start now? Scholar Yu urged. The Moon Shadow Demon Master nodded. Let's start. Asterisk 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 in the sacrificial temple. The scene became more and more chaotic. The place was too small, and the fight between nascent soul cultivators was noisy. With so many people, it was inevitable that innocent people would be hurt. Apart from their fellow disciples and a few good friends, most of them were in a relationship of mutual benefit. Most of them had experience fighting over treasures. When they were hurt by other people's spells, they were not sure if it was accidental or intentional, so it was inevitable that they would fight back. Because of this, the battlefield was quickly expanded. Compared to the others, Mo Tienga's group advanced and retreated in an orderly manner. 6 people and 1 beast. They attacked and defended together without any disorder. Mo Tienga had already put away the puppet. The place was narrow, so the few of them were enough to form a defense system. They fought and walked at the same time. Finally, they saw the group of people from Juyan's sect, pushing their way into the main hall. Juyan's sect also walked very steadily. They did not have many people, but under the leadership of Master Taoist Yuanmu, they were orderly. Master Taoist Yuanmu's eyes flashed when he saw them. The next moment he shouted, "Yunha, you guys come here." He said you guys, not you. The corners of Mo Tienga's lips curled up into a smile as she met Qin Shi's gaze. Master Taoist Yuanmu was indeed a smart person. He obviously hated them very much, but he could still temporarily let go of his hatred and choose to cooperate with them. "Yes, Martial Uncle Yuanmu," Ling Yunha answered. Then he gave Mo Tienga a look and looked at the exit. Mo Tienga pondered for a moment and understood what he meant. He was telling them not to delay and to leave quickly. She smiled gratefully. In any case, Ling Yunha's behavior was worthy of being called a friend. Right at that moment, a cold and gloomy aura spread, making people's hair stand on end. The cultivator near the entrance of the sacrificial temple looked back and instantly turned pale with fright. "Ghost cultivators! Ghost cultivators!" As he shouted, the cold and gloomy aura became stronger. All the nascent soul cultivators released their divine senses and found that a large number of ghost cultivators appeared outside, rushing towards the sacrificial temple. They were all brought here by Devil Lord Yuing, so they had never seen that ravine and didn't know there were so many ghost cultivators here. Now that they suddenly saw them, they were shocked beyond words. There were also ghost cultivators in Yunzhong, but they had all left the human world, so their numbers were also very few. However, the ghost cultivators outside numbered in the tens of thousands, and those in the nascent soul realm and above numbered in the hundreds. They were too shocked. There were actually so many ghost cultivators in Yunzhong? For a moment everyone stopped. Master Taoist Yuanmu also stopped. He turned around and saw that the group of people from Yu Mountain Academy had disappeared, including Nan Guitian, Taoist Ru Yi, and the cultivator surnamed Yen from 5 Elements Valley who came to help. A thought suddenly flashed in his mind, and he blurted out, "Not good." Big Beard asked, "Senior Martial Brother Yuanmu, what's wrong?" Master Taoist Yuanmu took a deep breath and said, "We've been tricked." Everyone from Juyan's sect and the other cultivators who heard this were all stunned. Master Taoist Yuanmu raised his voice and said, "Everyone, whether you believe it or not, I'm afraid we've been tricked by someone." Right after he finished speaking, a cultivator who had some friendship with Juyan's sect asked, "Fellow Taoist Yuanmu, what do you mean?" Master Taoist Yuanmu's gaze was like lightning. He turned to look at the entrance and said, "Everyone, why don't you think about it? Why did we come here? Who's missing here?" The cultivators pondered upon hearing what he said. Ling Yunha was the first to react. "Demon Monarch Yuing." Master Taoist Yuanmu looked at him with admiration in his eyes. He thought to himself, "This brat's intelligence is extraordinary, but unfortunately, he doesn't always do things as he wishes." After Master Taoist Yuanmu mentioned it, Mo Tienga was stunned for a moment before she suddenly realized something. "I see." Nie Wushang turned to ask, "What?" Mo Tienga said, "There's no hurry to snatch the primordial devil art. Why not wait until you're alone?" He acted so impatient and called these people to mess up the situation. "I'm afraid it's not as simple as snatching the cultivation technique." Master Taoist Yuanmu's gaze fell on her. Right now half of the nascent soul cultivators in Yunzhong are here. Demon Monarch Yuing, Old Donkey Ma, and the others have already left. They're obviously determined to let these ghost cultivators trap us until we die. With the existence of the sacrificial temple, these ghost cultivators didn't dare to enter. At the same time, with so many ghost cultivators here, it would be very difficult for them to kill their way out. This was different from when they crossed the canyon. At that time, there weren't many ghost cultivators who discovered them. But now, someone deliberately lured all the ghost cultivators here. Also, Master Taoist Yuanmu said, "You Mountain Academy, Nanguitian and Taoist Rui." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a sudden commotion in the sacrificial temple. If there were only Demon Monarch Yu Ying and Old Donkey Ma, they were only two people. Old Donkey Ma was an individual cultivator, and Demon Monarch Yu Ying only had Moon Shadow City as his subordinates. Based on the way devil cultivators existed, Moon Shadow City didn't have other nascent soul cultivators. But if Yu Mountain Academy, Nanguitian, and Taoist Rui were added, their numbers would be different. Yu Mountain Academy, Dawning Dansha Sect 5 Elements Valley. Altogether, they had almost 20 nascent soul cultivators. If they were really trapped here, these three groups plus Demon Monarch Yu Ying and Old Donkey Ma would be half of the cultivation world's power in Yunzhong. Why did they do this? Someone shouted. What's in it for them to trap us to death? Master Taoist Yuanmu smiled bitterly. One Leaf Island disappeared and North Pole Island declined. Do you still need to tell me why? With the decrease in resources, there would be turmoil in Yunzhong sooner or later. It's just that I didn't expect the turmoil to come so soon. And these people were so ruthless. Making a move against half of the nascent soul cultivators in Yunzhong. These people were really generous. It was their fault for not knowing their surroundings well enough to know there were so many ghost cultivators here. At this thought, Master Taoist Yuanmu's gaze towards Mo Tiange was filled with dense killing intent. If it weren't for the change in heaven and earth, One Leaf Island wouldn't have disappeared and North Pole Island wouldn't have declined. The change in heaven and earth was definitely related to this junior. Yunha, Master Taoist Yuanmu said calmly, come here. Sensing Master Taoist Yuanmu's killing intent, Yunha hesitated. What? Do you really want to betray Juyin sect? Master Taoist Yuanmu stared at him with a heavy gaze. You have a grudge against the sect, so it doesn't matter if you travel with them. But if you don't come here now, you're betraying the sect. Senior Martial Brother Yuanmu. The bearded man cried out involuntarily. Junior Martial Brother Ling is just. Master Taoist Yuanmu glared at him fiercely then looked at Yunha. Yunha, come here. Don't mention what happened in the past. You're still a disciple of Juyin sect. If you're good enough, Juyin sect will still be handed over to you in the future. But if you don't come here. Yunha suddenly sighed and asked. Martial Uncle Yuanmu, do you want their lives? Without waiting for Master Taoist Yuanmu to answer, he continued. I don't know if you still remember what I said about them. Master Taoist Yuanmu's gaze froze. He seemed to remember something. Martial Uncle Yuanmu, I won't betray Juyin sect. But please forgive me for not listening to you. Yunha looked calm and said indifferently. If I let you kill them, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Yunha. Master Taoist Yuanmu couldn't control himself anymore and shouted fiercely. Yunha didn't answer. He just said in a low voice, go back. Chapter 650. As soon as Ling Yunha finished speaking, the 6 people and 1 beast immediately retreated before the others could react. The main hall. Qinshi said. They were some distance away from the square behind them, but the main hall was right next to them. But Wushang, Mo Tiange said worriedly. The aura of divine beasts in the main hall was very strong. Nia Wushang and Yang Qingji. We're fine. Nia Wushang immediately interrupted her. They no longer hesitated and flashed into the main hall next to them. Qinshi waved his sleeve, and the stone door of the main hall was about to close. At this time, Master Taoist Yuanmu's exquisite pagoda arrived. The originally small and exquisite pagoda suddenly became big and smashed towards them. Jing Xingji's movements were also fast. The white tiger formed in the sword light and collided with the exquisite pagoda with a loud bang. The stone door was closed. Without hesitation, Ling Yunha released the flying boat. Get on. They were well aware that the stone door would be broken soon and wouldn't be delayed for long. When they boarded the flying boat, the stone door was heavily hit and then opened. Come here. Mo Tiange said quickly. I'll take you to a space crack. Don't resist. When everyone nodded, she motioned for them to stand beside her. She put her hands together and touched the space between her eyebrows to call out the bead. At this time, The spell had already hit the ship. Mo Tiange looked indifferently at Master Taoist Yuanmu and the others outside the ship. She held their hands, and a white light lit up, taking them into the virtual sky world. Without its master, the flying boat was quickly opened, and the inside was empty. Master Taoist Yuanmu frowned. Where did it go? But no matter how they looked, even if they dismantled the flying boat, they couldn't find any trace. The white light around them dispersed, and they opened their eyes. The place they were in was a bamboo forest. There were a few bamboo houses in the forest, and the spiritual energy was abundant. Outside the forest was a vast expanse of white fog, blocking their vision. This is... Nia Wushang was slightly stunned. Why did she feel it was familiar? A space crack, Mo Tiange said. I got the key by accident. Jing Xingji glanced around and muttered. Such a strong spiritual aura. It should be formed in the distant past era, right? Probably, Mo Tiange said tiredly. We'll have to hide here for a while. You guys can do as you please. She then returned to her own cultivation room. Qin Shi also followed her inside, as if he was very familiar with her. Xiao Feng revealed her true form and returned to her nest in the depths of the bamboo forest. Fei Fei came out to greet them, then went back inside. Lil Fan and Xiaohua. While they were cultivating, Xiaohua had been working very hard recently. Xiao Feng had been providing it with the vermilion bird's breath, and it was time for it to break through to the 8th level. Lil Fan was absorbing the breath of the Xian Wu. The others hesitated for a moment before following him into the cultivation room. Mo Tiange raised her eyebrows when she saw the 4 people standing in a row in front of her. She then took out 4 praying mats and threw them to them. Sit. The 4 of them sat down and stared at each other for a while. It was still Nia Wushang who broke the silence first. Have I been here before? Yeah. Back then, when we were chased by Mei Feng, we also hid here. But you were unconscious, so you didn't know. No wonder it's a bit familiar. Nia Wushang looked around and commented. It's really a good place. It's quiet after being chased. Yang Qingji asked. If we hide here, will we still be in the same place when we go out? Mo Tiange nodded. If the spaceship is destroyed, will it affect us? No, unless the space is torn apart, which might affect us a bit. Ling Yunhe looked around and said. It's such a pity that we don't plant spiritual plants in a place with such rich spiritual aura. Mo Tiange didn't say anything. She couldn't tell Ling Yunhe that there were actually a lot of spiritual plants. She just cut them off. Ahem. Qin Shi cleared his throat and asked. Fellow Taoist Ling, can you still go back to Juyan sect if you do this? Hearing those words, Ling Yunhe grew silent. Yes, fellow Taoist Ling, if you leave like this, will Ling clan be in trouble? Mo Tiange also asked. Ling Yunhe heaved a long sigh and said. If I don't do this, should I just watch you get killed? We won't necessarily be killed, Jing Xingji said with a sneer. There are only 5 people in Juyan sect. Although Master Taoist Yuanmu's cultivation level is in the late nascent stage, his old injuries haven't healed yet. Ling Yunhe shook his head gently. What about the others? From a certain point of view, today's events are related to you, Mo, Qin, and Yang. After your heavenly tribulation, the world changed and the continent shifted, which led to a shortage of resources in Yunzhong and led to today's events. Martial Uncle Yuanmu definitely has a way to stir up everyone's emotions and make you the target of everyone. We're already very tired, and we're completely relying on medicinal pills to support ourselves. If we're besieged again, can we still hold on? Jing Xingji was silent. After thinking about it carefully, this was indeed the case. If Master Taoist Yuanmu stirred things up like this, would the cultivators in Yunzhong side with Juyan sect or them? The answer was obvious. If you get killed, I might never get that answer, Ling Yunhe said with a firm gaze. I know there's a sword hanging over my head that might fall at any time, and this world might be destroyed. I can't eat or sleep well every day, so how can I give up this opportunity? As for the Ling clan, he showed a bitter smile. My great-grandfather is still here, so the Ling clan will be fine, but, in my opinion, it's still too early to worry about this. Nia Wushang interrupted him. Whether we can get out or not is still another matter. Yes, Nie Wushang's words immediately returned to the main topic. Mo Tiange sighed and said, "This time we're really in big trouble. When we were trapped in the far west, we could still ask for help. But where can we ask for help now?" Jing Xingji frowned and said with a wretched expression, "We're really unlucky. We were trapped by ghost cultivators once. And now we're trapped for the second time." Wasn't the situation this time similar to the one in the far west? However, the ghost cultivators in the far west were conscious, and they were actively trapped. The ghost cultivators here, on the other hand, were unconscious and were guided by others. Speaking of which, how did Devil Lord Moon Shadow and the others do it? They could actually get these ghost cultivators out of the canyon. Mo Tiange thought about it for a while. Nie Wushang shrugged indifferently. Who knows? There are ghost cultivators in Yunzhong. Maybe this Devil Lord has dealings with ghost cultivators, so he knows some characteristics of ghost cultivators. Everyone was silent again. After a long time, Yang Qingji said, "Enough with the idle talk. What should we do now? There are nearly 50 nascent soul cultivators, and so many ghost cultivators outside. Do we just wait like this?" "Yes, wait," Qingji said. "We can't go out now, so we can only wait." "Wait until when?" Qingji smiled and looked at Yang Qingji. "We've been waiting for dozens of years in the Palace of Immortals in the ruins of Returning Sea. Why can't we wait now?" Yang Qingji thought for a long time and sighed. "We can only do this." Ling Yunhe muttered. "Indeed, we can only wait. If we go out, Martial Uncle Yuan Mu won't let us go." "Fellow Taoist Ling," Mo Tiange suddenly asked, "do you think they can leave?" "I don't know whether they can leave or not. But Martial Uncle Yuan Mu isn't a person who will sit still and wait for death. He'll definitely think of a way." Ling Yunhe appeared very confident. This was the confidence he cultivated in the head as a disciple of Juyan's sect for a long time. "In fact, there's a very simple and stupid way," Jing Xingji said lazily. "As long as they don't fight among themselves, and go out to kill a few ghost cultivators from time to time, then retreat to the sacrificial temple when they can't. If they keep killing like this, they'll eventually kill all the ghost cultivators." Everyone thought about it. This was indeed a way, but it would take a long time. But it was also relatively safe. No matter how many ghost cultivators there were, they were still limited. These people were all nascent soul cultivators. For them, the only threat was nascent soul ghost cultivators. The rest were nothing to worry about. More than 100 nascent soul ghost cultivators sounded terrifying. But if they were killed separately, it wouldn't be that difficult. "If we can think of this, presumably Devil Lord Yuing can't," Qingji said. "In my opinion, they must have a backup plan. In that case, hiding here and watching the show is the best choice," Nie Wushang said after thinking for a while. Upon hearing this, Ling Yunhe looked conflicted. For him, facing people from Juyan's sect and throwing away their lives was unbearable. It seems right. Mo Tiange thought about it carefully. In any case, we have nothing urgent to do. It won't be too late to leave after they rush out and both sides are injured. Right after she finished speaking, Ling Yunhe suddenly stood up. "Fellow Taoist Mo, please take me back." The other 5 people's gazes all fell on him. Mo Tiange was surprised. "Fellow Taoist Ling Yunhe said, the Ling family raised me and Juyan sect raised me. Ling Yunhe was able to have today's achievements because of my sect elders. Now that they're in trouble, how can I only care about myself?" Yang Qingji frowned. "Fellow Taoist Ling, even if you leave now, Master Taoist Yuan Mu won't necessarily forgive you, so why?" A bitter smile appeared on Ling Yunhe's face. "No matter how Martial Uncle Yuan Mu treats me, I shouldn't refuse what I should do. Saving you is out of righteousness, and going back to fight side by side with my fellow disciples is also out of righteousness. If I don't care about their lives, how can I say I didn't betray Juyan's sect?" Ling Yunhe was a person who never showed mercy when he needed to use means, but deep down, he retained stubborn loyalty. He wasn't like Jing Xingji, whose cold treatment after his master passed away made him lose his sense of belonging to the sect. If it were him, since he had already fallen out with them, why would he turn back? Ling Yunhe was different. He had always been an elite disciple of Juyan's sect. He was focused on training since he was a child, and he was even personally taught by a nascent soul cultivator. Later, he even became the sect head and was regarded as the successor by Master Taoist Yuanmu. Even if he was disappointed later, the preferential treatment he received for more than 200 years wasn't fake. Let him go, Qingxi suddenly said. Emo Tiange was a bit surprised. Senior martial brother? If it were you or me, would we give up on our fellow disciples in this kind of situation? Emo Tiange was stunned and pondered with furrowed brows. If it were them, even if Lord Taoist Jinyang disagreed with them one day, it wouldn't change the fact that Xianqing School had protected them for hundreds of years. Emo Tiange sighed and stood up. Fellow Taoist Ling, come with me. Chapter 651. The sudden appearance of Ling Yunhe, above the wreckage of the spaceship, immediately attracted the attention of all the cultivators in the hall. Among the people of Juyan sect, Master Taoist Yuanmu's gaze was especially sharp. Ling Yunhe walked over to him, brushed his robe, and knelt down without saying a word. After a long time, Master Taoist Yuanmu finally snorted. What, didn't you want to advance and retreat with them? Could it be that they kicked you back? No. Ling Yunhe's expression was calm. I'm a disciple of Juyan sect, so I should advance and retreat with my senior brothers and sisters. Master Taoist Yuanmu flew into a rage and said mockingly, Advance and retreat with us? Didn't you just say you wouldn't listen to me? I'm sorry, martial uncle. Sorry? Is that all? Master Taoist Yuanmu wanted to slap him to death. Look at what you've done. Ah, you knew there was news of Black Tortoise, but you didn't tell the sect, and even traveled with the sect's enemy. At the critical moment, you stood on their side and helped them escape. You did all this, and you only say sorry? Ling Yunhe said calmly. Martial uncle, it's not that I have news of Black Tortoise, but that they led me to Black Tortoise. Master Taoist Yuanmu was stunned. What? Ling Yunhe continued. Among them, fellow Taoists Zemo, Yang, and Nye helped me in the past. A month ago, I met fellow Taoist Nye in the North Sea, and was entrusted by him to send a message to the Celestial Pole. Thus, they led me to Black Tortoise and promised that if Black Tortoise recognized me as its master, they would help me obtain Black Tortoise. Master Taoist Yuanmu withdrew his angry expression and asked, And the result? They kept their promise, Ling Yunhe said. I obtained Black Tortoise's breath. Master Taoist Yuanmu didn't say anything, and just stared at him. When the surrounding nascent soul cultivators heard this, their gazes turned greedy as they looked at Ling Yunhe. When these gazes turned from greedy to dangerous and restless, Master Taoist Yuanmu raised his head and released the spiritual aura of a late nascent cultivator, firmly stopping these people in their tracks. Everyone, it's already been decided who the treasure belongs to. Don't cause any more trouble. Yuan Muzhen said word by word, his gaze sharp. Moreover, we are besieged. It's hard to say if we can get out. As soon as he said that, all the cultivators hesitated. That's right. No matter how important the treasure was, could it be more important than himself? If he was trapped here and unable to escape, so what if he had more treasures? Enlightened Master Yuanmu's tone softened as he continued. Fellow Taoists, Yuing Old Donkey Ma, and the others have sinister intentions, intending to trap us here until we die. We should work together as one. If another dispute arises, how are we going to break through the siege? He paused for a moment before adding, If we manage to escape safely, the Juyan sect will naturally offer a gift of gratitude. After a series of threats and promises, Spiritual Master Yuanmu finally managed to pacify these people. Then, he cast a soundproof enchantment around the people of Juyan sect, and glared fiercely at Ling Yunhe. Get up, I'll deal with you later. Thank you, martial uncle. Ling Yunhe stood up and sat down beside the bearded cultivator. Why did you guys suddenly disappear? Immortal Yuanmu took a deep breath and asked, You suddenly appeared again. Can they also suddenly appear? Ling Yunhe hesitated for a moment then said, Martial uncle Yuanmu, they helped me obtain Black Tortoise this. His attitude annoyed Master Yuanmu again, but this time, he controlled himself and soon regained his composure. Forget it. Brat, you're just stubborn. You just need to say whether they're a threat to us or not. To this question, Ling Yunhe quickly answered, Martial uncle, don't worry. I can guarantee that. Master Yuanmu stared at him for a while, then finally sighed in compromise. Alright, I'll believe you this time. After making sure Ling Yunhe was fine, Emo Tiange closed the small mirror in her hand. This mirror was an ordinary magic weapon. As her cultivation level deepened, her control over the virtual sky world became more and more casual. Showing the scene outside the virtual sky world in the mirror was just a casual action. Fellow Taoist Ling is fine. We don't need to worry about him anymore, Emo Tiange said. Since you've decided to wait, you can do as you please. It'll be fine as long as you don't destroy my place. Seeing that she looked exhausted and wanted to send them off, the three of them stood up. Nie Wushang said, Rest well. Yang Qingji only cupped his hands. Jing Xingji giggled. You want to drive us away so soon? You've been holding it in these past few days, haven't you? How could they not understand what Jing Xingji meant? Qingji was indifferent. Emo Tiange glared at him. If you say one more word, I'll kick you out. Jing Xingji sealed his mouth and went out with a sneaky smile. He even considerately helped them close the door. I'm exhausted. Emo Tiange stood up on unsteady feet. She pushed open the door to the neighboring lounge and fell headfirst onto the bed. She then rolled over and buried herself in it. Qin Shi, who was following behind her, found it funny. He pulled her out and laid her down, then he also lay down. The two of them didn't speak for a long time. They just lay there quietly. Ever since they entered Carefree Valley, they'd been fighting non-stop these past few days. After an unknown amount of time, Emo Tiange suddenly said, How long do we have to wait? Qin Shi didn't open his eyes. Are you in a hurry? No. After denying it, Emo Tiange turned around and touched his face. We won't stay here for another few decades, right? You'll be old if that happens. Qin Shi opened his eyes and leaned against her. Am I old? Emo Tiange retreated in defeat. By the time they regained their composure, Jing Xingji, Nie Wushang, and Yang Qingji had already started construction outside. They cut down most of her bamboo forest and built a row of bamboo houses. When Emo Tiange saw this, she felt so distressed that her heart was bleeding. She cut down half of this bamboo forest to build the bamboo houses. Later, Fei Fei used his white tiger strike to test it and cut down another half. Now they cut down more than half of it, leaving only the outer half. This wasn't ordinary bamboo. Its texture was so hard that it could be used to refine magic weapons. You guys really aren't polite. She gnashed her teeth. Building so many houses. Do you want to take root here? Jing Xingji said shamelessly. You said it's up to you. Nie Wushang smiled. I don't care. But this guy insisted on building an immortal's cave for each of us. Cultivation rooms, lounge rooms, collection rooms, concocting rooms. We want all of them. Blue veins twitched on Emo Tiange's forehead. They even built suites. Qin Shi raised his eyebrows and cast a sidelong glance at Jing Xingji. You want to live here for a long time? Don't be so stingy. Jing Xingji put his hand on Qin Shi's shoulder. It's fine if my fiancé lives here in the future. Nie Wushang nodded seriously. You're right. It'll be convenient for you to marry into our family in the future. Jing Xingji turned his head and bared his teeth at her. Thank you so much for being so considerate for me. Of course, Nie Wushang said bluntly. When I think about how you'll call me martial uncle in the future, I think I should show more love to you. Jing Xingji found a problem. He seemed to have taken advantage of Qin Shoujing's future daughter, but it seemed he was a generation lower than her. Idiot. Glancing at him coldly, Yang Qingji went back to his room to cultivate. Inside the Black Tortoise Temple, under the leadership of Master Taoist Yuanmu, all the cultivators reached a preliminary cooperation agreement that day. All the cultivators trapped in the temple temporarily put aside their grudges and worked together until they were free. After resting for a few days, they divided into small teams according to how close they were to each other, and went to test the ghost cultivators' strength. Among them, 20 stayed behind to guard the ghost cultivators, while the others attacked and stayed behind to support the ghost cultivators. The members of each team cooperated closely with each other. They didn't seek to attack by force, but to hold their ground. After this arrangement, all the cultivators put aside their prejudices and went out of the temple to test the ghost cultivators' strength. The result was very bad. These ghost cultivators didn't have consciousness and weren't very strong individually, but they seemed to have fighting instincts. As soon as they found people, they swarmed over like a swarm of bees. With this kind of fighting style, they had to fight 1 against 2 even if all 50 of them came out. Moreover, their bodies carried a strange dead aura. This dead aura was different from that of ordinary ghost cultivators. It had a very strong corrosive ability. Once it came into contact with it, it was very difficult to force it out. In the first test, 20 people were surrounded. In the end, 1 died, 2 were seriously corroded, and 7 or 8 were slightly corroded. For nascent soul cultivators, this was already a terrible casualty. This made everyone's expression grave, and the atmosphere heavy. After 3 days, all the lightly corroded people were forced out of the dead aura, and the 2 seriously corroded people were saved but lost the ability to fight. The next test was even more cautious. Master Taoist Yuan Mu even went out personally, leaving only 10 people behind to look after the ghost cultivators. The others all went out and tried to stick together, avoiding direct contact with the ghost cultivators to avoid being corroded by the dead aura. With a targeted plan, many people no longer held back and took out some magic treasures that could restrain ghost cultivators. This time, the test was very successful. They even killed 7 or 8 ghost cultivators, while most of them only suffered light injuries. This great victory encouraged all the cultivators. They finally had a little confidence in breaking out of the encirclement. More people were injured. This time, they rested for 10 days before taking action again. The cultivators made a series of targeted arrangements, leaving only a few people in the temple. But they still returned with a great victory, killing 5 ghost cultivators. However, they were not so lucky. This time, 2 or 3 people were seriously injured, and even more were lightly injured. Ling Yunhe was confused. We have experience, but why are there more injured people? Master Taoist Yuan Mu thought for a long time and sighed. We neglected an important problem. What is it? Resources. Master Taoist Yuan Mu said. The ghost aura of these ghost cultivators is hard to guard against. If they are slightly corroded, they can't rely on their own cultivation. They have to use elixirs, but the elixirs are limited. He spoke tactfully. In fact, after more than 20 years of consumption, the elixirs of the nascent soul realm had become much more expensive. None of them had many spare elixirs, which directly affected their speed of recovery. If the ghost aura was not completely expelled and they went into battle, their strength would be affected, and of course, more people would be injured. Then what should we do? Ling Yunhe pondered. Should we leave more time for rest? Master Taoist Yuan Mu and the other elected temporary leaders considered for a day, and finally decided to adopt Ling Yunhe's suggestion, to take a longer rest and try to completely expel the ghost aura. After recovering their strength, they would go out of the temple to fight again. If they deliberately slowed down, it would take them more than half a year to kill most of the ghost cultivators. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.